Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. And I'm currently still waiting for my guest to show up. He was having a little bit of some tech difficulties, as is always the case, when it's something that just can't be delayed. I think he's showing up right now. So how about I go back to the other screen and I'll be right back. Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Again, I'm Sandy.
Hello, hello.
And
And
this
I'm
is
Mark.
Mark. Over on that side. Welcome everyone to my first time covering like a debate live. It should be interesting. It should be fun. Hopefully I'm allowed to.
I don't think our media is as bad as America where they like copyright. I think like it's public access, isn't it?
I would hope so. And just everyone in the Sandbox, let me know how our audios and visuals are coming through. Yeah, so I have CBC ready to go from the CBC News website. CP24 is also streaming it on YouTube, but I figure I might have a little bit more leeway if I'm going from CBC. I was looking for CPAC because that one I would imagine is allowed.
I think CPAC would be live streaming it, wouldn't they?
I would think so, but I didn't see
Because
anything.
they have the last debate on their YouTube channel.
But I don't know if they posted it after the fact.
Could be.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone is saying that we look and sound good.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, there's been a ton of snow here, ton of snow in Nova Scotia, I take it.
It's doing the classic thing where it will like rain a little bit at like +1 or +2, and then just enough to like cover everything with like water, and then it'll dip below to like -2, -3, enough to freeze everything over, but then go up to +1 or +2 again, just enough to like add another layer of ice, and then go down to like -2 or 3 and freeze it all, and then that's fun because that does melt right away. That takes like 2 or 3 weeks of just like walking on like ice that you have to put crusher dust out. And you have to put it's uniquely. I don't know if it happens so much in like as you get into the more central and western parts of Canada. I only say this because I only know from here, but it's it's so we have such like a wet cold here because of like being next to the ocean
Mm.
and like having like storms that come and where the hurricane path through the rest of the years is sometimes we just get hit with like warmer air, but like it's the slush. I rather -30 and like be super cold out, but at least I can bundle for that and like
Mhm.
step outside and be like, all right, cool. But it's
Mhm.
so wet and ugh, here, so
Yeah.
that's been fun. But I'm sure you don't want to hear all about that.
Eh, we're Canadian. We talk about the different snows in the different areas because in my area, we've been hit by multiple snowstorms over the last little while with like a ton of accumulation. I haven't seen this much snow on the ground since I was like basically a child. So I went out and walked like so much yesterday because I love it. And you're walking on the sidewalk and you have like these two walls beside you, and some of the snowbanks at the edges of the driveways were taller than me. And I'm like, I kind of love this. And I went on a walk for way, way, way too long yesterday, just going because I guess the sidewalks have been properly plowed. So it was an easy walk, and it just felt like you were walking down a hallway. Yeah, anyway, we have a
Anyway,
debate coming up with the Ontario leaders.
fun.
Did you catch any of the Northern debate one that I sent you the link of?
I skimmed through it, basically just try to get a feel of like,
What they're going to be like?
I'm not going to be able to fully like compare like what like Ontario policy and like
Hmm.
history. Like I'm not going to say I know it as well as like Nova Scotian or federal for
Hmm.
Canadian or American, but um, I just wanted to get a sense of like how do they communicate, how do
Hmm.
they present themselves, what was their vision, um, and I mean honestly, I don't know if it felt too Canadian, and I don't mean that in like the um, in like a pejorative in that like haha look at this is Canadian, but I mean like we are still at the point where we're seeing like this like civilness and politeness of like decorum being put first still within Canadian politics, because like I remember before Trump that like Rob Ford and Doug Ford were seen as like really just like a warning sign of like these people, if they get into government and if they start like really messing around with it and going bringing their brand of like you know faux populism that was like campaigned underneath Rob Ford and then Doug Ford. Um, it's like it can't be allowed to just like be comfortable. And now we're like 8 years, like we're like what, like from 2014, like we're 11 years later, and Doug Ford is like about to enter a third majority comfortably
Hmm.
because he's just been rehabilitated from so much stuff happening in the last 10 years. And so I'm watching it and I'm thinking like there is not enough fight in opposition. There's just they may sound like they're opposing. They may come off like they have a quip, but it doesn't really actually seem like there's like a systemic critique of anything, and it really feels like it's just status quo. I'm nervous, is what I'm saying
Hmm.
going into this debate. I am nervous that there is not going to be a clear call out of just the normalization of how far right conservatives have traveled in the last 10, 15 years in Canadian politics. Um, we've normalized it way too much.
Hmm.
And so I'm a little nervous about that. And so I want to see something. I want to
Hmm.
see something that really calls it out, because you know, it, I remember people saying like we're always like 10 or 15 years behind the States,
Hmm.
because we had Harper and that was after they had Bush, and then we had Trudeau after they had Obama, and then we're having this like, more right wing style populism like really crop up in Canada more so than it's ever have, but it's been allowed to stick comfortably and grow in the last 10, 15 years because we have been too polite
Hmm.
and too Canadian about our politics
Yeah.
and try not to be adversarial enough. Uh, it's not going to work because we can't kumbaya our way out of this. Um, so like I want to see some fight, and that's
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yeah, like the only person that I really felt like did any substance pushback was Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party. He did a decent job of that. But looking at Merritt Stiles and Bonnie Crumby, my ongoing joke still stands that you can't tell the two of them apart. Like they look
I was
alike, they
they
present the
sound
same way.
alike.
Yeah. But like also recently too, people are just losing faith in the parties because there was a candidate for the Liberals who was posted on Facebook or something saying, "Oh, well, we're going to have to reassess that thing that we were saying about doubling ODSP. Like that might not be attainable type thing." And it's just nobody has trust in both the NDP or the Liberals. They're not pushing back nearly hard enough. They're not calling out Doug Ford for all he is. And the thing is that they could be, but they're not reaching the audiences. So for all I
Yeah,
know, Merritt Stiles has said some of the best quips ever towards Doug Ford, but we're not hearing it. And if we can't hear
but
it,
and
they
that's
need to
and
change their
that's a huge
tactics.
um and that's a huge media problem in our
Mm-hmm.
country. And I do fault the parties if they can't communicate clearly
Mm-hmm.
with the media medium that they're given. However, at the same time, I can say that the media medium that exists right now is highly skewed to favor right wing
Mm-hmm.
and center right perspectives. And while our media is not as right wing consolidated as it could be, and like it presents in the states, we have so many newspapers now that have been bought up by,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, companies that are owned by the Post, which isn't even Canadian. Uh, and we do have like CBC is great for what it is. We have some local independent media, but like as it was with the states, capital wise, like there's no investment from a lot of rich people investing in left wing media because they would have to be class traders, and that's not happening. So that's why right wing media has so much money, and it's why again I look at like what happened in like after 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, up to 2016 on the internet on the Canadian side of things, where there was like Ontario proud and Canada proud. And it all comes from like, wanting Rob Ford to be a mayor of Toronto. And there was all this money that was just came in out of nowhere into these like groups that was like pushing right wing politicians, and there's been no laws or regulations that have cracked down on any sort of thing that way. And so you're looking at a media landscape where there's no incentive for any media to want to cover left wing voices. I say all the time that like I've gone out of my way to try to watch Jagmeet Singh have his press conferences just because I know for a fact that they're not going to get headlines in any paper or in any CBC broadcast or in any CTV global. Like they're not going to really cover him like wall to wall like they would with a liberal or conservative like press release or news story. Um, but then they have to do better because
Mm-hmm.
they have to realize that they're backed into a corner, and if they can't fight their way out of that by trying something differently, if they just go like, oh well, what was me, media's not fair, we're trying to send our message but they won't spread it, it's like
Yeah.
this is do or die. Fight your way
Yeah.
out of this. Don't
No.
just like ho
Yeah.
ha.
Like quite
It's so
literally.
frustrating.
Yeah, like quite literally for a lot of people, this is do or die, especially when it comes around the issues of increasing the rates of ODSP, doubling it. That will literally save lives. And if these, both on the federal and the provincial levels, if the NDP and the Liberals can't get heard, they need to start doing things to get heard. Don't be polite, do the jabs, do the ridiculous, call outs and things of that sort. Get the media to pay attention to you by what you're doing, what you're saying. Don't be so Canadian.
Right, and that's where I say again, like we gotta stop being so Canadian about like I understand wanting to have decorum. I understand respectability. I understand the paradox of tolerating intolerance. I do believe fundamentally in wanting to like pick out voices that are fitting that paradox where We wouldn't allow certain, like, I respect Germany when they say like they have a firewall where certain parties will not be worked with whatsoever because of their far right, Holocaust revisionism. Like I understand that, but at the same time, like this decorum's gonna kill us if we just allow all these voices to say their piece and just go at the end of the day, well, we had a really nice debate, and
Mm-hmm.
we I got him on that thing and he got me on this thing, and ultimately we'll have to let the voters decide. It's like the voters don't always know. And also, those are only the voters. That's not the whole. Like I swear, and please stop me if I go too far. But it's like there's more than just the population that votes. Non-voters are the people you represent, even if they don't vote, even if they're completely checked out. You still have to represent them, and you have to hope that one day you might convince one of them to actually get up and go. You know what? I'll vote for the first time. The amount of times I see just like every party go, well, if they don't vote, why are we appealing to them? Because they're not going to vote. But you don't know that
Mm-hmm.
unless you make an effort.
Well,
And so,
that's my biggest fear with this election coming up. Because last election, 57% of people did not vote. And this election, we're in a freaking snowstorm situation here. Like, you're not seeing any of the signage around because it gets buried in the snow or blown away. So it's not being brought to people's attention all the time that there's an election. It's the off seasons for elections. Also, again, people with disabilities, if you have any sort of mobility disability, you need a walker, a wheelchair, a cane, you're trapped indoors unless you have access to a vehicle, either through your own vehicle, paying for somebody, you have a friend. You're trapped indoors. So there's going to be a large chunk of people who might not be able to get out there and easily vote due to the weather. And
exactly.
I am worried we are going to get under 40% turnout. And as far as I'm concerned, if that happens, there should be like an automatic redo.
But we don't have that
I
in
know.
any elections, Canada. Like,
Yeah, it should just be like, okay, all the leaders, you all failed. New leaders, new election. Like, I would love if that was somewhere in our constitution to show that, basically all the leaders failed in that case if you can't even get out 40% of the population.
and then that again comes to they do not try to appeal to anybody they think doesn't vote.
Hmm.
Like I've looked at canvassing before, and every party is the same thing. It's people who they only look at people who are registered to vote or have voted in the past. So like there's houses you just skip. Um, and you just skip them because it's like, oh well, they're not registered or they are going to vote conservative, or and it's like
No, I've seen those
i-
lists.
if if we behave as if there's not a single person, or there are people that we just cannot convince, if we behave that way without evidence, and to say when every election comes around we just assume that person's unreachable, um, or that person's too difficult to reach out to, uh, you're going to lose people wanting to vote
Hmm.
because they're going to feel like you're not making an effort to meet me anywhere.
Hmm.
um,
I just want to,
like Nova
yeah.
Scotia had a 44% voter turnout. And out of that 44%, 58% voted for the Progressive Conservative Party. What if you boil that down, if you look at the population of people who could vote, not voters, but people who could vote, uh, 2 in 10 Nova Scotians put this government in a majority,
Hmm.
a super majority, where they're not allowed to like change committee times
Hmm.
and like determine how many minutes opposition can speak because they have like 2/3 quorum. So, but that's in 2 in 10
Yeah,
because
I just want to get to somebody in the sandbox. Mozart saying there's no vote by mail in Canada. There is, but again, this is happening so short notice. There's no lead in. Like, it's the shortest time possible between dropping of the writ to getting the election date. A lot of people are being caught unprepared. A lot of people won't know to do this on time. You have until the 21st, I believe, to get your ballot by mail type thing. So it's, and not enough people are paying attention. The leaders aren't making it known. Like, during the debates, they need to be saying this sort of thing. like how to vote, where to vote. Because right now I can go out and vote at the electoral office, and I do need to go out and vote early because I'm going to be busy that day during the day. And then in the evening, I'm going to be live streaming the election and hopefully not completely freaking out, but probably because I have no faith. Like Doug Ford, again, if you look at the percentage of the non voters, he got 18% of possible votes. And it is just so frustrating that a lot of people will sit at home saying, oh, well, they're not really paying attention to me, so why should I bother? When it's like, they're still being affected by everything. They're still feeling it. The longer wait times in the doctor's office, the fact that they can't find a family doctor, the lack of mental health supports, like all these things that are affecting their day-to-day life, making it worse, like the lack of rent control here in Ontario now. All of that. But because they're not being spoken to, they're like, I'm just going to sit this one out, even though things will get worse, far worse,
So
under
there
another
has to be
Ford government.
a cognitive disconnect somewhere in some of these segments of people where they cannot put two and two together, saying, on the one hand, things are getting worse and my leaders are not listening to me and they are not doing the things that they need to be that they should be doing. They are not helping me. And to also then turn around and go, there's no point to voting because they're I'm not going to be listened to, and therefore I don't need to participate because it's all like there's a disconnect.
Mhm.
If they really thought it was hopeless, they shouldn't be getting upset if things are getting worse. If they really thought it was hopeless, they shouldn't care that their living standards are getting worse, because if they think it's hopeless, there's no point in caring. But they obviously do, because they obviously don't want things to get worse. They have to find there has to be a way for them to connect that understanding to going, yeah, and then you need to turn around and go and participate and be in part of the electoral process, and also recognize that you're not in this by yourself and that your actions have, we have a commons of people. So when you sit out, it affects everybody. But at the same time, your own logic doesn't even make sense as to why you don't vote, because if you didn't care, then you wouldn't be upset if things were getting worse.
Yeah.
The people do need to get out there and vote.
Yeah. Like I do voter shame. I do. For all the people, like there's certain types of people, the people who've been I've been using the term hoodwinked by the conservatives, who've been convinced that the conservatives are something they're not. I don't necessarily blame them, they're victims of the system. But it is the people who just sit at home, who don't get engaged, and just complain that things are getting worse without doing any of their own effort to look into the parties, to find out what's going on, to do their civil duty, to get out there. Because, again, as somebody who lives with disabilities, this could be life altering if we got a party in there that would double ODSP rates. And I covered it on my
Mhm.
last news live stream, what Doug Ford did and didn't say about people on ODSP. Like he wanted a big pat on the back for raising it 5% after a few years of not raising it. And it's like, no, 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 we're still in dire poverty. That's nowhere near enough. Like the fact that a single disability payment cannot cover rent, that should not be allowed. Like that, we're not asking for 2 months, just the basics: rent, groceries, medical needs. That's it.
No, exactly. And it's,
Okay, we're getting close to
I
the time,
understand.
so I'm just going to try switching
Yeah.
screens, so everyone be patient with me while this looks silly. Oops, yeah, that definitely looks silly. There we go. And then I did this in the wrong order, like I always do. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Everyone's like, what are you doing? Ah, okay.
Hey, I mean,
Now,
at least you got a working laptop.
yeah, there we go. I did it in the right order, so everything looks good right now. And again, if I start covering something that you're not seeing, let me know. And I will make sure that I'm sharing the right screen with you, because what you're seeing on screen, Mark, is not what everyone else is seeing.
Gotcha.
So this is from the CBC News site, live now, apparently. Oh, should I hit play? Okay, just going to mute it until there's actually like people on a stream on stage or something. because I don't want to listen to the music. But yeah, this debate couldn't be more important right now because we're looking at a whole bunch of really stupid things that could be undone. So Doug Ford wants to do the tunnel under the highway, which will cost north of $100 billion by the time it's all said and done. There was the moving the liquor into the convenience stores a year early, which costs almost $1 billion. Nothing you can do about that one now. It's already done. But there's the whole fiasco around the science center and the therma spa and everything. A lot of that can still be undone before, the province is completely on the hook for a lot of these useless projects. Saving the green belt, that's something that could be done with a different government. Like, whoops. Where am I getting sound
until
from?
Ontario voters decide tonight.
Oh.
For
Sorry, I just muted you for a second. Oops, that's the wrong screen again. There we go. I am so bad at this. Okay, you are unmuted again. I had a YouTube tab that was waiting for it and it went on and then everyone saw what I just did. Oh well. So here are the people. That's Doug Ford. That was Mike Schreiner before that. Which one is she? Which one is she again? Both look alike. Okay, let's get the volume on.
Not know the questions in advance. Their speaking order has been determined by a
Can you
draw.
hear it okay, Mark?
And so let's get right into it. Our first question is on the issue of leadership. You each have 1 minute. I will turn to Doug Ford first. What makes you the right leader to respond to the tariff threat?
Well, this election, folks, is all about leadership. It's who do you believe is going to protect your family, protect your businesses, protect jobs,
Not him.
protect your community.
Not him.
It's about who you believe is going to protect Ontario. We've seen what President Trump's tariffs will do, and we're going to see what President Trump is going to be like for the next 4 years. If these tariffs go through, no matter if it's next month, next year, I can tell you one thing, they'll devastate the economy. But I can promise you, we will get through it. We'll get through it together. We'll be more united than ever before because we already have a base on our economy. We have a strong base. We're going to expand our economy, diversify our trade, bring companies in from all over the world, just like we've done for 7 years.
Keep in mind,
Over
he said that he
$70
couldn't
billion
raise
of
ODSP
investment
rates
come
because
to
he needed a
Ontario.
strong economy first.
850,000 jobs. And I can tell you, I will fight like I've never fought before to protect the people of Ontario.
All right, Doug Ford.
And I just want to say thank you so much, Alexander, for the $2 Canadian. We could back out of Starlink again. First vote for M3. Yeah.
First of all, is as Premier, I'm going to be on your side fighting rising costs. When I moved to Ontario more than 30 years ago, where I grew up in Newfoundland, Ontario was a place of opportunity, but not today. After 7 years,
is this
Doug
her
Ford
second
and the
or third
Conservatives,
election
the cost
as
of
leader?
everything is through
This is
the
her
roof.
second.
There's been
After
bad
Andrea
deals,
Horwath
waste,
went at it for like
and
4
of course,
rounds and
lots
still
of
got
promises,
nothing
but
and no
nothing
improvement.
really delivered.
So this
As
is her
we
second time
face
up
this
against
big
Doug
threat
Ford.
from Donald Trump, something we've never faced
Because
quite
why is she
to this extent
reintroducing
before.
herself? Like, why
Doug
isn't
Ford
she
quit his
well
job.
known?
Well, I'm applying
Like,
for
why
another
is
job. And my
this
promise
second
to you is
debate of her
this.
second
We're
election,
going
she's
to
still doing
fight the rising
introductions about
costs.
where
We're
she's
going to
coming
hire
from?
doctors
Yeah.
and fix the healthcare crisis. We're going to build the affordable housing that people need, and we are going
Yeah,
to
like
make
she's
sure
the
we
official
protect and defend
opposition.
every
People
job
should know
in
who
every
she is.
industry. That's my commitment to you.
Marit Stiles, thank you very much. Bonnie Crombie, same question to you.
Like, that
What
was
makes you the right leader to deal with the tariff threat?
Thank you, David, and honored to be here tonight. So for me, leadership is about vision. It's
She
also
has
about
such
priorities.
I'm calling the
and
manager
it's also about
vibe.
having integrity. It's about stepping up when you need to see something done. My mother always told me, Bonnie, if you don't like what you see, then change it. So that's why I'm here tonight running to be your premier. When I look around Ontario today, I can't recognize it. After 7
You
years,
see on the screen
2.5
though,
million
what makes
people
you the
don't
best
have
leader
Oh.
to respond to the tariffs? So far,
People
none of
can't
them have
pay their
actually answered
groceries
that
and their
question.
rent in the same month.
Actually,
A
Doug
million
Ford
people
was the
are
only one
using the
that
food
even
bank.
remotely even mentioned the word
That's
tariff in
Ontario
his
today
opening
very
statement.
sadly, and we need to change it. And
Like
we
that,
need a
like,
leader who
so
will not only
why?
protect jobs,
Why do you
but a
need to do this
leader who will
pointless
get you a family family doctor. And
like
that's what
fake
Ontario
answer the
Liberals will do.
question, introduction,
Just basics, right?
welcome,
I'll
here I
set up
am,
a
Why
family
sort of
didn't they have
thing.
proper introductions to begin with so they could have gotten that out of the way and they could just do the whole answer the actual question?
Heating and build homes that are affordable. That's what you get when you vote Ontario Liberals.
Okay, Mike Schreiner's next. I'm actually curious to hear what he has to
The
say.
question is about the tariff threat. What makes you the right leader to deal with that?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, David, for the question. For me, leadership is about putting people before self. I would not abandon my job at a time when we should be coming together to show strength through unity to push back against these tariff threats. As someone who grew up in a rural community, I know what it feels like to have a government abandon your community. It's just not fair in Ontario right now that we have a government wasting $2.2 billion on a spa in downtown Toronto, or tens of billions on a tunnel under the 401, or millions ripping up bike lanes in Toronto when so many people across this province are looking just how do I afford a home or find a doctor or not have my rural hospital closed. Mr. Ford is handing out $200 checks to millionaires and billionaires at a time when we need to be investing in helping people afford homes, fix health care, and make life more affordable for the people of this province. That's the kind of leadership I would bring.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you very much.
I like that.
Many
Straight
serious
for
subjects
going
on
for
our
Doug
agenda
Ford,
tonight.
right like
We
that.
just want to help
That's
you, the voter,
what you
understand
need
the
to do.
person
Remind people of
behind
how
the
Doug Ford is
politician.
wasting
That's
the
what
money.
an opposition leader
Personal
should do.
questions.
Yeah.
We'll just ask the candidates,
As opposed to saying,
30
oh,
seconds
right,
each
I
to
moved
those
here
leaders.
like 30
Start
years
with Bonnie
ago.
Crombie. What was your first job? What did it teach you?
Oh, great. So I got a job when I was 14. I lied about my age. I was a cashier at Woolco, and I
What?
did a lot of retail at the mall and jean shops. And then I worked in a home decor store for
This
many
is
years.
Why
the
is
Always
attempt
this
had
to
a
a purpose
humanize
question?
them.
job. I wanted to
It's the
contribute
attempt
to
to
the
make
family
them seem
income,
like
and
one
I
of the
wanted to be
regular
able to,
people, but
pay for my own expenses.
This is
I think
like
it's so
watching
important that our
the
young people,
governor of New
if they can
York
find a job today,
or the governor of
go out and work
California,
and contribute.
because Ontario is like the
Crombie, I'll turn
biggest, one of the
to
biggest
Mark
states in
Stiles.
our
Your first job, what it
country,
taught you?
and to
Well, let me
just
think.
like,
First
what
job
was your first
babysitting,
job
but
like?
I'll go to the
Hmm?
second job, which was I was a swimming instructor when I was like from the time I was about 15
You know,
onward,
what was it
and I
like on your
worked
first
every
day of
summer doing
university?
that,
Like,
and
did you
on the
feel like
weekends, and
a
mostly I taught
special
little kids,
person?
really
Like,
little kids. I learned that parents
this is
can have
stupid.
really
yeah,
strong
this is just an
opinions
attempt to make them seem
about
like one
their
of the
kids and how
normal
they should be
people.
learning swimming lessons.
But
I
as far as I
learned
know, they're all rich,
responsibility
except
of
I
taking
don't
care
know
of
the
others,
status of Mike Schreiner.
and I got to
But
bring home
like
money
the
to my
rest of them
family,
are
which was
all
welcome, and helped to
rich.
contribute to going to university.
They don't
All right, Mark
understand
Stiles,
what
thanks
the
very much.
average
Turn to
person
Doug
is
Ford, your
going
first
through.
job and what it taught you.
There's no
Well, my
stakes or
very first
urgency
job
behind
was
any
when I
of
was
these
in grade 2
questions.
Doug
delivering the
Ford needs to
Globe
be
and
like,
Mail
yeah, my first
newspaper in freezing
job
cold weather
dealing
at 5 in the
drugs.
morning. But let's say the real job, when I was about 16 years old, I went over to Canada Packers on St. Clair, worked there for 4 years. I'll never forget, I made $12.49 an hour, and back then that was big money. I brought home a paycheck, I remember $310, because you're only allowed to work 24 hours, but man, did we work. We slugged that beef day in, day out, and loaded up these 40-foot trailers, but it was
What was your
one of the
real
great
first
jobs when you're a
job, Doug
teenager.
Ford? The
Doug
one
Ford,
that was
thank you.
off
Mike
the
Schreiner, your
books.
first
Come
job, what
on.
it taught you.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm, and my first job was feeding cattle, driving a tractor, and driving a combine, probably at an age that my parents would admit was far too young. But they didn't pay me for that because that was my contribution to the family farm.
None of these
So
people
my
could even
first
just
job
turn
was
the
actually
question
my
to a
father
current thing.
loaned
Like,
me the
be
money
like,
to buy a
yeah, my
lawnmower.
first job
And I
was
went
doing
out and
this,
mowed
and I
people's
can use that
yards
to
and
see that these
brought some money
problems
home for
that we're
myself.
facing
And
today
I
need to
learned how to
be,
be an
they can't
entrepreneur. I've
even
been an
address
entrepreneur
the
most of my
current
life,
moment with
and I'm
Well,
really
this
Doug,
question,
proud
which
of
you
what I
could
learned as a kid
if
from my
you really
parents.
All
cared.
right, Mike Schreiner,
like you
thank
could have pointed out the
Our
fact that
upcoming
Doug
topics
Ford
do have some
gave
ground
a salary,
rules,
like
and that is
an
to say that
hourly
if one of the
rate,
leaders
and it's
here
like,
makes
okay,
a
well,
claim
compare
about one of
that
their
to
opponents
what the
or
current
another
hourly
party
rate is
or
in
their
Ontario
government
and
or
how
previous party
unaffordable
leader
that is.
in their answer, we're going to
Yeah.
give that other person extra uninterrupted time to respond. So this means we sort of encourage you to talk about your plan. And with that, we turn to a very important
All
topic.
right.
Healthcare. You have 1 minute each. Bonnie Crombie, the first question to you. 2.5 million people in this province do not have a family doctor. We see the strain on emergency rooms. You all have different proposals for a fix. What timeline? When can people expect to have dedicated primary care?
Yeah, within 4 years, David, is the answer. So I talk to people across the province, and they tell me they're afraid to get sick. They're really worried that the worst thing that can happen to them is to have to need a family doctor because they know they might not have one available. That's not the kind of Ontario that I believe in. The kind where 2.5 million people don't have a family doctor, 11,000 are waiting for surgery or care or treatment, or people in the north
Call
have to
out
drive
why.
4 or 5
Why
hours
is
to
that
see
the
their
case right
family
now?
doctor. And that's because Doug Ford
Okay.
doesn't believe in our public health care system. One of the things that make us so proud to be Canadian. It's time for a change. A vote for Ontario's Liberals is a vote for family doctors. And how am I going to do that? By paying them better, bringing more of them, bringing in those internationally trained doctors. They could be your children who are trained in the US or the UK. Let's bring them back home by doubling the residency spaces, by paying our nurses and our PSWs a living wage. But none of that can happen while Doug Ford is Premier. So it's time for a change.
All right, Bonnie Crombie, that is your time. Because you mentioned Doug Ford twice, I'll give him 30 seconds to respond to those claims before we move further.
Well, first of all, there's no government in the history of this country that's invested more, 30% more than the previous government. That's over $30 billion. And we ended up going out there, attracting 15,000 new doctors, 100,000 new nurses,
A lot of the money
30,000
is going
nursing
in
students
towards
in
private
colleges
clinics.
and universities. But I
Didn't
can tell
he
you one
also
thing, you
have a
can't do it
surplus
without
that
a
he's
strong
never spent?
economy.
Has
Yeah.
anybody
The
ever called him
foundation
out
of
on
our
that?
healthcare
No, I
is
don't
a
think so.
strong economy, and
Like,
unfortunately, all three of them
I
fail on
remember
our economy.
All
specifically
right,
that
Doug Ford, I'll come back to
there
you.
was so
Bonnie
much money
Crombie,
he
the
was
question,
given
of
for
course, is
healthcare that he
how
just
soon
didn't
under your
spend.
plan
Why isn't
will
that like a
people out
talking
there
point? That should be a huge
have
talking point.
dedicated primary care?
Within a four-year mandate, David. It's not fair in Ontario right now that 2.5 million people don't have access to a family doctor. Rural hospitals are closing their services, and we have 30,000 young people on a wait list to access mental health services. I was in Chesley, Ontario, and I met a man who said, thankfully, this local hospital saved my life. But if I have a stroke today, in the evening or the weekend, it won't save my life because it's only open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's what happens when you underinvest in healthcare. And that's exactly why the Ontario Greens have a plan to make sure everyone has a family doctor, primary healthcare provider, stop the privatization of healthcare, invest in rural hospitals, and ensure that the people who provide care for us, nurses and frontline healthcare workers, are paid a fair wage. And we will also expand mental health services because mental health is health.
Mike Schreiner, thanks very much. We'll turn to Marit Stiles on the question, when under your plan will people out there who don't have a family doctor right now have one?
Right. Thanks for the question. And the quick answer to that is our healthcare guarantee, which is that everybody will have one within 4 years. Having said that, my pledge is also that within the first 100 days, we're going to remove the paperwork and the administrative burden from the desks of our family doctors. Look, family doctors that I talk to, what they want to do is see patients, and they're overwhelmed with that paperwork, that burden. So we're going to make sure we get that off their desks by providing additional support, connecting them to family health teams. And I'd say this as well to folks watching out there. You know, 10,000 people in Sault Ste. Marie lost their doctors overnight, not that long ago. We have emergency rooms closed. An average wait time in an emergency room in Hamilton is 22 hours. Let that sink in, right? We cannot afford to continue on the road that we're on. So I'm also going to recruit and train and make life better for nurses so that we can keep them in our
She
hospitals.
makes it sound
treat
like
them
she's
with respect,
personally going
not
to do
take them to
that.
court or freeze their wages.
All right, Marit Stiles, I'll turn to Doug Ford on the core question, how soon under your plan will everyone have a dedicated primary care provider?
He's already
Well,
had
what
7
I said
years.
earlier, we've invested over 30% more than the previous government, and that's over $30 billion.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
What we've
like
done,
all
and I
this
don't care
bullshit about like,
political
oh, we've
stripes, as
invested
you
this and
know,
that
I
and the
work
other thing. A
with
lot of
anyone.
it's gone to the
We
private
brought
sector.
on
And if
Dr.
it's been so
Dave
effective, then
Philpott,
why is it
former
over the past 7
Liberal
years
health
there is now
minister, and
2.5
we're
million
spending
people
over
without a family
$1.8
doctor? It's
billion
because of him.
to
And it's
connect
not
every
to
single
spare the
person. We're
liberals.
leading
They
the
also
country right
underfunded
now with
Oh,
healthcare
yeah.
when they were
90% of people
in.
connected to
So, like,
primary care. But
you
that's
know,
not good enough.
oh, you
We're
did
going to hit
30% more than the
100%
previous
with the
government.
help of
Oh, so
Dr.
you
Dave Philpott,
underfunded slightly
well-renowned
less.
right
Mhm.
across the
Yeah.
country.
Like,
Doug,
But we've also built,
cool.
as I said, over
no, Doug Ford,
50
Great
like
job.
new hospital
7
sites
years,
or
and
additions,
he's put
$50
us
billion,
into this situation.
and we're
How
going to
can we
continue
expect
to
him to dig us
invest.
out of it in the next 4
Invest
years?
into the doctors, over 15,000 people, over 3,500 new beds, and another 3,000 on top of that. But you can't do this without the foundation, and that's the economy. And each of them fail on the economy. It's very simple.
All right, that is time. Doug Ford, thank you very much. We're going to turn now to our first debate where anyone can jump in. If you want to talk about what anyone else has said. I will step in if it turns into everyone just speaking over each other. And of course, we reserve the right, don't want to, but we reserve the right to mute microphones if the audience just can't understand what's being said here. Our subject continues to be healthcare. I'll turn to Mike Schreiner. And the question is a family doctor for everyone realistic and affordable?
It absolutely is, but it won't be if Ontario continues
What?
to
No,
be
no.
dead last.
That question, is it
capita healthcare
realistic?
spending in the
No,
entire
it's how do
country.
you
It would
make
take
it
an additional
happen?
$12 billion just to
Yeah,
get
Everyone
even I'm
deserves a
just kind of
family
like,
doctor.
That's why
CBC,
you
where
have
is this
rural
talking? Why is
hospitals
that a
closing
talking
their
point?
services.
Yeah, no,
That's why
everyone
2.5 million
should
people
have a
don't
family
a doctor.
doctor. It's
We
not.
need to make the
That
investments
was
that the
wow.
government
That
has
was a
failed to
horrible
make.
question.
Say this, one
Very
in
bad
answer to your
question.
question, David. Like, we cannot afford not to get this right. We cannot afford not to have family doctors for everyone. It's essential and it's crucial. But let's be clear: the healthcare crisis that we are in right now, the hallway healthcare crisis, was invented by the previous Liberal government. But Doug Ford and his government have poured gasoline all over it. We have a crisis in our province right now. He can talk about how much he's spent on healthcare, but the reality is, talk to any Ontarian about the state of our healthcare crisis right now. It's terrible. We cannot afford not to invest in healthcare right now and make sure people have family doctors, but also nurses in our
Bring up the
hospitals
slush
right
fund
now.
that he's been
Respect
sitting on
them.
for the
Fire-
last 4
By
years.
your
I'm
own
Nova
admission, Doug,
Scotia,
you put
and even I remember
1.8
that. Why
billion
can't
into your
one of them
plan
bring
for
it up?
healthcare. You put more
Remember,
into the SPA and
$4.4
Ontario
billion
Place at
in
2.1
COVID
billion.
spending just
Yeah, you
went
might
away,
build
just
hospitals, but you're
disappeared.
not recruiting doctors. You're not
Yeah, why
recruiting
isn't that in
nurses, and
every
you're not
single
giving
question
them
on
the
healthcare?
operating costs. I'd
$4.4
like you to look into
billion.
the
Where'd
camera,
that go?
and I'd like you to tell the
What'd you
people
spend
at
it on?
home who
If you
lost
didn't spend
loved
it, why
ones
not?
while they were on the wait list, what you did over the past 7 years to fix our healthcare system, because it's broken. We're in
At least
crisis.
she's actually
and you're
attacking him
bragging about what
personally.
you've done. It's been an abysmal failure.
Doug Ford?
Well, Bonnie, what I will tell you, there's a reason why Dr. Jane Philpott,
Yeah, you had to hire a liberal.
a liberal minister, comes to our team. It's very simple because she sees the vision. She sees that we're building healthcare. She sees that, again, backlog surgeries. You know something? We have less backlog surgeries per capita than anyone in the entire country. We've bought over 49 MRI machines to spread out across the entire province.
Who's operating
As I
them?
said,
People
over
waited,
50
David.
billion,
11,000
over
people
$50
died
billion
waiting for one of
of
those
investment.
scans.
Said he
But
would
you know
end
something?
hallway
We will
healthcare.
never.
It's gotten twice
Twice
as
as
worse.
worse.
We will
Why is he
never.
still in
Can I
office?
jump
Can
in
he
for one
explain to
second?
people
We got 10
why
We will
seconds
not
I would
left.
use a
just
credit
say this,
card.
Doug.
We'll use your OHIP card. That's what we're going to do.
Private
in healthcare.
medicine, that's
And we're
what you
gonna
want to take us to.
continue
Private
moving
medicine,
forward.
Doug.
Doug,
That's
listen.
what we're
Okay,
going to do.
with that, we've run out of time in this segment. We're going to continue with another important subject, and that is the cost of living. Once again,
I
have
hate
1
how
minute
it's
to
like,
answer.
no,
Mike Schreiner,
healthcare
I'll start
deserves
with
a lot
you
more
this
time. Like the way that the
Groceries,
debates
rent,
are
and
broken
mortgage
up, where it's
payments
like,
have all
no,
gone
no,
up
we're
for
only
many
going to
people, and
dedicate.
yet
You give
also
a
for many
subject
people,
as much time
salaries
as
have
it's
not
needed to
kept
be
up.
actually like
What will you
ironed
do to
out.
help ease what is
But
for
I
many
will admit, I
people
do
a
like
daily
Bonnie
struggle?
actually going
Yeah,
right
times are
at
tough
Doug
right
Ford
now.
in this, as opposed to
I
just
hear it
talking
every
to the
day.
camera.
And unfortunately,
I
in Ontario
agree.
right now, the rich insiders are getting richer,
Right.
and the rest of us are just struggling to get by. Rent. Nobody on a full-time minimum wage can afford rent anywhere in Ontario. Food bank
Or
use
in
is at an
Nova Scotia.
all-time high,
And
up
whose fault is it?
78%
Mention
just
who's.
in the last 2 years.
Come on, Mike. I
And
have
it's
faith
not
in you.
fair that Mr. Ford has
There we go.
handed out $200 checks to
Mm.
millionaires and billionaires like Galen
Okay,
Weston,
I don't
the guy
like that
gouging you
line
at the
though.
grocery
Mhm.
store, when so many people
He's
Don't like the
already-
line about.
He's
to
already
even
said it.
pay
He
for
doesn't need to say
groceries.
it again.
That's why the Ontario Greens
Or
are
it's
saying
also I don't
we will
agree
lower taxes
because as
for
much
low
as
and
I
middle
don't
income
like
earners,
billionaires and
saving
billionaires
them
getting checks,
$1,700 a
it's
year
the
and asking
universality
the
of it that
wealthiest to
makes it
pay a
so
bit
that
more.
it's
We're
much harder to
in-gouging at
attack.
the grocery
You can
stores,
always
and
just
we'll actually
increase their
start building
taxes and
rental
get that money
homes
back.
that you can afford.
But
Okay, because you've
you
mentioned
know,
Doug Ford's name, he has an opportunity
I'm
for
fine
30
with the
seconds to
millionaire getting a
respond.
$200 check because then they're going to pay
Mike
more taxes.
and the other two
Like
folks
I
on
don't
the
care.
stage, this is where we
It doesn't work
fundamentally
as a talking
disagree.
point.
Yeah.
See,
I like this
Mike
debate
looks at
style
it
where it's like,
as
well,
that
since he mentioned your
$200,
name, you get to
and so do my
respond. And
other
so it's
two
like, I would
colleagues.
just
It's
be
their
like,
money. That's what they
so
do. It's-
Sandy
this
says
is the
this, and
government's money.
Sandy
Well,
said
let me
that.
tell you, folks, it's
Just
your
make
money.
it come back
But
to
that
me.
also is going to give a lot of time to
And
Doug
when
Ford
we
to
saw
talk
more
because if
revenue
every
come
leader
out
is going to
food
mention Doug
offers,
Ford, if you
we
don't have,
believe that
you
it
know,
goes back to the people to
um,
stimulate the economy.
Bonnie
If you
calling
go,
out the
and
NDP for
you might be
something,
able to do something
or the
right,
NDP calling out
otherwise
the
I'd be
Liberals for
able to do.
something, like they're not going to
We
be able
need
to
give them back
crosstalk each
taxes.
other.
That is
Mhm.
too
You
So it's
guys
just going to
pay
give
them
more
and
time for
keep
Doug
charging
Ford to
taxes. taxes.
Doug
That's
Ford, thank you
Spiel.
very much.
Yeah,
I'll turn
very
to Mark
true.
Stiles on the
Not a
original
great
question. What will
format
you
for the
do to help
opposition.
alleviate the
No.
cost of living?
Well, first of all, you mentioned rent. Rent in Ontario is up 38%, right? Let that sink in. 38% across the province on average since 2018. That's amazing. And it's not just in cities like Toronto, it's in every community across this province we are seeing that. I have a plan to not only bring back rent control, but also keep more money in your pocket by bringing in a grocery rebate program. And I think it's really essential because people need that now. What that means is that every month you're going to get a check back that covers some of the costs, money back in your pocket, and you can spend that on food. And we're also going to fix the problem of price gouging by all of these grocery CEOs with a consumer watchdog. It's about time we did that. And one thing I can tell you is you're going to get about a check for about $120 for a family of 4 back every month. And let me tell you, I am not going to be giving a $200 check to Galen Weston.
All right, Stiles, thanks very much. I'll turn back to Doug Ford to have your core response to the question, what will you do to help ease the cost of living?
Well, this
The
is where we
cost of living that
fundamentally
he made into a
disagree.
crisis.
Fundamentally, we're the only government in the history of Ontario that's never raised taxes. We've seen more revenues come up because we've created the climate and the conditions for companies to invest. Now,
Yeah, but
these
then what are you
three
spending that revenue
did
on?
bring back the gas tax, and I know they've admitted it, that they're going to bring it back. They'd bring back the one fare that saves people $1,800. They'd bring back the tolls on the 412 and 418. They'd bring back the tolls on the 407 that we just ended up getting rid of. And the difference is, I don't believe in taxing people, and I will never take money out of your pockets. They believe
That
it's their
should be
money.
something
There's
that
never
goes
been
against
a
him by
tax they
saying
don't
that.
like or a
Most people
toll
would be like,
they
no,
don't
no,
wanna
we want
hike.
the wealthy
That's
taxed.
the difference between myself and
It'd be nice
my
to hear one of the
three,
other leaders
folks
be
on
like,
the-
no,
on
no,
stage
we are
here.
going to tax
we do
the
have a debate
shit
coming
out of
up
the millionaires and
momentarily
billionaires.
to talk about this very issue. But right now, I'll turn to Bonnie Crombie on this
you.
core issue
Thank you,
of
David.
bringing down cost of living.
Let me just ask you at home, is your life more affordable today than it was 7 years ago? I bet the answer to that is no, because I hear from people everywhere I go. They can't afford to even buy their groceries and pay their rent in the same month. And it's a really cold February, and they're using a lot of money paying for heating bills. I'm not okay with that, people in food banks. After 7 years of promises, we got nothing. We got no action.
Could
You
have
were
mentioned
promised a
the
tax cut,
raise
but you
in
never
the
got
amount
it.
of people
Here's
going
what
to a
I'll do
food
with
bank.
Ontario Liberals. I'm going to cut your taxes. Yes, your income tax, and you will pay 22% less on the first $75,000. I'll also take the HST off your home heating and your hydro bills, and I will build homes that are more affordable because we're going to take off those hidden taxes. And there will be no tax on carbon. You can take my word for it. We will double the ODSP for people living with disabilities.
The taxes
We'll also
aren't the real
phase in rent
cause for,
controls,
like,
and we're
She
going to
just
the
said
look at
she
auto
would double
insurance
ODSP.
premiums
That is time.
because they're out of check.
Bonnie Crombie, thanks very much. I'll turn to Margaret Stiles.
I don't know
as
if
we
she
turn
means
to
it, but
the
that
open
would be
debate,
significant, wouldn't it?
That's the
portion of
problem
this.
with,
And I'll kick things off just with a
having one
question.
of
Do you
her
believe a tax
candidates
cut is the best way
mentioned
to
kind of
make this happen?
offhandedly, like, oh, we're going to have to
No, as I
reassess
said,
that.
our
It
plan
sounds like
is
it's going
to
to
bring
be
a
a
number
broken promise, so should they come in?
because we think
And
that,
they've
look,
given
But
us
then
no
that's
reason to
kind of
believe that.
foolish to
Here's
mention
what
it
we've
on
got
air right now
proof,
then if
right?
it's
So
something that they're
we
going to
have
backtrack
an
on, right?
opportunity, but we
Well,
Like
they've
maybe
all,
she's
that's the thing, they have all publicly, like the Greens, the NDP, and the Liberals, they have all publicly stated they would do it already.
Stop the price gouging by these grocery giants. And under Doug Ford and the Conservatives,
But
we have
there's
seen again and again
there's
that they
more
favor
to
those
help the
big companies over
affordability
regular
issues
people.
than
So that's my
taxes.
opportunity.
Things like the
Can I
rent
ask a
control that
question
Merritt was
really
talking
directed
about.
to Doug Ford. The three of us have all said we would double ODSP rates.
Yes.
People are living in legislated poverty. And I'm wondering if Mr. Ford thinks it's okay in a province as wealthy as Ontario that people would be forced to live in legislated poverty on $1,300 a month when average market rent in this province is $1,600 a month and over $2,000 in Toronto. How can we sleep at night knowing that people with disabilities can't even afford to pay the bills?
Bonnie Crombie, I can see you want to get in. Doug Ford, did you want to respond to that?
Well, I'll respond quickly. Under ODSP, we've actually increased it based on the rate of inflation. It's gone up since 2022, 17%. That's
Yeah.
what we've done. But you can't pay people on ODSP if you don't have an economy. And all you three
But isn't the
believe in
economy
is
so
simple.
strong
Just
under
tax
you
the people
already?
to death. Tax companies to death. We saw what you
Doug,
did.
listen,
And no,
Doug,
it's my,
very
it's my
clear.
opportunity to get
7
in.
years ago,
No, I think it's my
I
opportunity
walked into a
to get in.
bankrupt province because you lost 300,000
Suddenly
jobs.
the economy
You
is just
taxed
Did you
suffering
just say
so
4
bad.
years
Hey,
ago?
Doug,
Okay,
you
Doug
promised.
Ford,
You
Bonnie
just-
Crombie.
Hey,
It's just
Doug, you
been in for
promised
7 now.
Yeah.
Doug, you
7
promised
years
7
ago.
years ago that you would cut
Yeah.
our taxes.
I'll tell you
didn't
what I've
get it
done.
done, Doug. You didn't
find
cut
it-
our
I find
taxes.
it, Rich.
I am the only leader on this platform
you're not.
today
No, you're
that
not.
is committed
I've
to cutting
committed.
taxes.
I've committed to
And with
cutting
my plan-
taxes.
and-
I've committed to cutting taxes
And with my
on low and
plan-
middle income
Oh,
families.
so every party's just gonna be like, ooh, I can cut more tax. I can cut more. Oh my god.
No, it's so gross that, Doug Ford will boast about how great the economy is, how he's made it so great, but then as soon as ODSP is mentioned, oh, well, we need a strong economy in order to help, people pay rent. The people on ODSP.
I almost fell off the stage here, David, when Bonnie Crombie said she'll cut taxes. When she was mayor, she raised taxes every year, raised the
My tax
garbage
increases were
tax,
the same as
raised the
yours.
water tax,
Same as
raised
yours
property
in
taxes
Toronto.
every year. Matter of fact, at one time, Mississauga was well run until Bonnie came along.
Okay,
Oh,
Doug
can I
Ford,
just jump
I
in
know
here for a
Mary
second?
Stiles wants to
I
get
I'd
back
just like
in.
to ask another
Goodness.
question, Doug. I
know,
feel like,
thank-
we've talked a lot about, you're talking about your little things, but listen, $2.2 billion that you're spending right now to subsidize a luxury spa in downtown Toronto. That's $400 per household in Ontario. Do you think you could maybe cancel that so that people in Ontario won't be subsidizing a luxury spa?
Do I get this one?
You get the we've run out of
Can I
time,
ask
but
you one
I'll give you
thing?
the chance to
We've
respond.
cut over $10,000 of taxes. Why did any of you
Where?
not vote for it? Because you don't believe in cutting
$10,000.
taxes.
Woo!
Thank God we have Mayor Carolyn Parrish.
I will have
The
to
economy is
I'll
not
have to-
directly
I'll
just
have to stop
tied
it
to
there. I'll have to
taxation.
stop it there.
Tax the
Unfortunately,
rich.
we are out of time
Tax
just for this
tax the
particular
hell out of
segment.
them. I don't
But
wanna
we
hear about
have many
taxes
more to
otherwise.
come, including public safety. You have 1 minute each for your answer. And a reminder, if you make a claim in this section about one of your opponents in your answer, we do have to give that person uninterrupted time to respond. And now I turn to Doug Ford with a question about youth crime. Teenagers are being arrested in smash and grab robberies, in car theft, and in some cases, murder. What will you do to deal with youth crime?
Well,
He's going to
first of
blame the
all, we
Chinese
led the way
somehow.
on bail reform. I don't believe that no matter if it's a 17-year-old or a 22-year-old, that should get a slap on the wrist when they kick in the door and put a gun to someone's head or, unfortunately, murder someone. I don't believe in that. I believe in throwing them in jail. I believe in hiring tough judges and justices of the peace because we've seen this happen, and nothing frustrates our great police officers more than this. They arrest someone, throw them in the cruiser, and the guy in the back is saying, I'll be out before your end of your shift. And guess what? He gets out because of the weak policies that
Mandatory
Bonnie
minimums are
Crombie
ruled
and the
unconstitutional when
federal
Stephen Harper
liberals,
tried to
it's
implement
catch and
them. The
release.
Supreme
Let
Court of
little
Canada
Johnny
already
out
ruled on
10
this.
times on bail to recommit the exact same
Or
crime.
maybe dealing
I
with
don't
the core
believe in that.
issues as to
I
why this
believe
crime is
in making
happening in
sure
the
they
first
stay
place.
in
And if
jail,
you were
and there's
talking about
consequences
youth
when you
crime,
start
you
terrorizing
really want to take a
neighborhoods. And
youth
that's
and
what we're
lock them
seeing
away
in
for the rest of their
Toronto and
life because
GTA.
they made some
We're
dumb ass
investing in our
decisions
police
when they were
like
young?
we've never seen before.
All right, Doug Ford.
Like,
thank you
why
very
are they
much.
getting involved in
You have
crime
said
in the
your
first
name,
place?
Bonnie
Deal with
Crombie,
those
so I'll give you 30
situations
seconds to
and then
respond to
look
that,
towards
and then
restorative
60
justice.
seconds on the question of
Because
what you'll do
even
to
if you've
respond.
done a violent
Also
crime at
say
the
how
age of
proud
20,
I
does
am
that
of
mean
my
that you should be
record
in
the
prison
city of
until you're
Mississauga and
60?
People electing me with 78% of the vote because I created jobs. I brought in investment. I set us up for growth and economic development. And I'm very proud of that. But you know what? Something in Ontario has changed. People just don't feel safe anymore. They lock their doors. They put their cars inside their garages because we see carjackings.
Crime's been going down.
and break-and-enters and home
Also,
invasions
when
like we've
haven't people
never
locked their
seen
doors
before
and
in
put
the
their
past
cars in
7 years.
garages?
Under this government,
That's
things have
not,
gotten
it's
out
not
of
like,
control.
ooh, I have
Yes,
to
we
start
will
locking my door
respond
now,
on
eh?
time, but I will also tackle the causes of crime.
But again, this is, we're
Yeah,
talking about,
normally before I just let Buddy borrow my
Mhm.
car. You could just, take it for a joyride every now and then. But now I can't do that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And again,
no,
we're
that,
talking
I
about
think
youth crime, and I just
there's
want to
some
be,
can shift
clear
on
when I'm
into
saying, like, even if they committed violent crime at the age of 20,
Don't I get 30 seconds?
should they be locked away until they're 60? Like, I believe in restorative justice. I believe in a justice system that should be working with them to make sure that they never do that sort of thing again. But to just lock them away in a punitive system where if they do
And-
eventually get out, they're worse off than when they went in.
No, exactly. And looking at Doug Ford saying that there's no difference between a 17-year-old and a 22-year-old. Like, 17-year-old's a minor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what kind of justification he's trying to pull by trying to age up a minor to be able to punish them more. But 17-year-old is a minor, and you can't just arbitrarily decide that you want to take minors and treat them as adults with mandatory minimum for certain crimes. That's already been ruled unconstitutional.
Yeah.
We're going to be really tough on
But
repeat offenders,
this, like,
including
you
those
know,
criminals and those
war on
carjackers.
crime,
We need to do
80s
this.
rhetoric, early 90s rhetoric is just coming back because there was a spike in some crime because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
which is now retreating and going back down
Thank you
to
very much. Mike
pre-COVID-19
Schreiner, your
levels.
opportunity
Well,
to
it's the
respond
same
to
nonsense
Um,
on the federal level with, Pierre
Yeah,
Poilievre saying he wants to use the
Mr. Ford
notwithstanding clause for
talks
bail
about,
reform.
Bail reform. That's a federal issue. I would suggest he look in the mirror at the fact that 80% of people in provincial jails right now in Ontario are awaiting trial. One of the reasons people who are accused of crimes are getting off is because there's so many delays in the Ontario courts that they get out because of that. And now this Mr. Ford wants to make it even worse by criminalizing people who are experiencing homelessness. We need to invest in housing people, not throwing them in jail. We need to invest in treating people with mental health and addictions challenges, not threatening to throw them in jail. People need public services. That's what a caring Ontario looks like. That's what fighting for fairness looks like. Ontario Greens will put care over crime.
That is time. I will turn to Doug Ford because his record has been challenged on 2 occasions. I'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, thank you so much. As the Liberals were closing jails, we're building jails. As
That
the
shouldn't be
Liberals
something
and
that you're
NDP,
bragging
we're getting rid of our
about.
police.
Oh my
We're
God.
hiring more police. Actually, over
We're
2,000 more police
we're
officers through our
building up a
colleges, and we're
bigger
paying
police
for their
state. Come on,
Yeah.
guys.
education.
Yeah.
Yes,
Come
I
on.
No, we want to
believe
throw
in making
in the
sure
jail
we
more
hold
people, like Mike Schreiner was
accountable.
mentioning.
I find it
Doug Ford
ironic,
wants to criminalize people
Land
that are
of the free.
encampments.
That's why we
saying
build
about the
jails.
police.
Yeah.
You said on
Like
tape
Doug Ford
that
has
you're
wanted
scared
to use
of
a
the police.
notwithstanding clause
And
so they
as
can
for
go
you,
into
Mara,
encampments and just throw
your
people
own
in jail.
members want to defund the police.
All right.
Like, who wants to defund
Defund
the
the
police except
police.
the NDP?
And that
Only
is-
No,
your group.
That
I
is
want
time.
to defund the police.
Not in
I'm
this
not
response.
NDP.
Okay.
It's tricky keeping it all straightened out, but Mart Stiles, this is your opportunity to respond to, what was our original question? Youth crime.
Youth crime. Yeah, thank you for that, David. And I will start talking to youth and about youth because that was the question. And look, I mean, really, if we want to address a rise in youth crime, we need to invest in our schools, make sure they are full of caring, qualified adults to teach and provide lots of youth programs and community support. But look, I mean, there's no question. We know this, that everyone deserves to feel safe. And a lot of people are seeing a rise in theft, like auto theft in our communities. People are worried for their safety. I know, I hear it a lot. On this issue, my priority is always going to be taking care of people. And that means, as I just mentioned, taking care of young people. It also means ensuring that people with addictions get the health care support they need, people who are living in encampments and homeless get housing. But look, we need to fix our court system. And right now, it is so backlogged that it means that dangerous people are falling through the cracks, and many others who deserve their day in court aren't getting it. We need to fix that, and that's an issue that the provincial government can address right now.
And that is time. You're all slinging things at each other, so it seems like a perfect opportunity to have an open debate. You can all jump in, but I'll start with Bonnie Crombie on this instance. Violent crimes up. What do we do?
You know what I think is really important? That we have a dedicated bail court for repeat offenders. So they are dealt with harshly and right away. This is the problem, the catch and release. And this is something that Doug has had 7 years to deal with and has done nothing about. We also need a plan for people who have addictions, not just use a notwithstanding clause to get them off the streets. There's no plan on where to put them and give them the treatment that they need.
We haven't really talked about here at all are victims. And as I was saying in my response earlier, what we're seeing right now is because of the backlog in our courts, courts. We're seeing the dangerous folks get out. Innocent folks actually can end up behind bars for far too long, but cases are being thrown out under the Conservative government of Doug Ford. And of course, many others are not getting the justice that they deserve, including, by the way, victims of gender-based violence. So, you know, I've talked about this a number of times, but I want to make sure we remember that there are victims involved here too. This government cut back on the Victims' Compensation Fund. They have failed to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic. And again, you know, he always wants to talk about throwing people in jail.
She's also referring to the fact that the Ford government won't put through Lydia's law.
Making sure that people actually get their day in court, which you're not seeing under the
Okay,
current
we've only got about a minute left. So I'll turn to
One
this
of the
side.
ways we prevent people from being thrown in jail in Ontario right now, with the government saying they want to actually criminalize homelessness, it's just horrible. Like, we're better than this. We need to build a caring Ontario. It's a crisis of caring if the government's going to say we're going to criminalize homelessness. Let's house people. 93% of the deeply affordable homes built in Ontario were built before 1995. 3 decades of underinvestment. That's why we have 81,000 people experiencing homelessness.
I do want to give Doug
government
Ford an
has
opportunity
said
to get in
no
here.
to solving that, and now they say they want to criminalize homelessness. Come on, we're
Doug
better
Ford?
than this.
Well, we've invested into our police like no other. $75 million into guns and gangs. We're buying more helicopters.
And
We're getting
things
more
have
boots on the
gotten
ground.
worse.
We've hired more judges, over
people
25
that
judges.
crime is up.
We've hired more
350%
prosecutors. We're
up.
getting the backlog. But you know what the problem is? Do you know why there's a little bit of a backlog? Because your catch and release policies, you don't believe in mandatory sentences. None of them believe
7
in
years.
mandatory
It's
sentences.
unconstitutional.
And release, and they're back on the street, and they're kicking down another
that's the
door.
thing.
I don't want those people kicking down doors.
Unconstitutional, but
I
also
want
he's
those people
talking about
in
all these
jail.
things that
That's
need
what
to
I
be
wanna
fixed.
do.
Like, he hasn't had the last 7 years to do exactly what he wants to do.
I want to say
Talk to the police.
I'd like to.
Very simple.
I'd like to
Folks,
know
when
what
you
our
see a
plan
police
is.
officer, please go up to him and say,
Thank you.
has the PC government supported you?
Oh, my
Or
goodness.
has the previous
All right,
government
Meanwhile,
we
you
do
cut
have to
3
wrap, or we
million
won't get through
dollars.
any of our other
I know I have the
subjects.
support
So I'm
of
going
the
to keep
police,
moving on
and I
here.
have your backs too.
We need a
right.
plan for homeless people. They are our family members. It
Okay,
could have been
we're
my
moving on. We're
father.
moving on. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see everybody's as passionate as they are. I'm the referee. I got to keep us on schedule here. We are looking for a quick answer in this next segment, a maximum of 30 seconds, and a yes or no will do. Mike Schreiner, I will turn to you. Would your government build housing on the Greenbelt?
No, we will unlock housing that people can afford in the communities they know and love, instead of opening the Greenbelt for development, which would only benefit wealthy, well-connected insiders. That's why we have a housing crisis in Ontario. The priorities are wrong right now.
Bonnie Crombie, would you build housing on the Greenbelt?
Absolutely no. When I was chair of Big City Mayors, we made it very clear that we could accommodate the housing that was necessary, all within the municipal boundaries that had existed. The mayors have a plan, and they would have stuck to it. Doug Ford told his donors that he would open up the Greenbelt, then he promised us he wouldn't.
like,
and
"Oh,
then
no,
he
he
went
said
ahead
the
and did
name."
it anyways. And of course, we pressured him to do the right thing and pull back.
All right. Merritt Stiles, the question is, would your government ever build housing on the Greenbelt?
Absolutely not. Look, Doug Ford and the Conservatives decided to open up the Greenbelt, even though he said he wasn't going to do that. I am so happy and proud to have stood up against that move and pushed them back on their heels, and we won alongside farmers and everybody else. But look, our farmland is not up for grabs. It is not up for grabs. We have plenty of other opportunities and space within urban boundaries to build the housing we need. What we're missing is a government that has the political will to build the truly deeply affordable housing that Ontarians deserve.
That is time. Merritt Stiles, thank you. Doug Ford, I'll turn to you. Would your government build housing on the Greenbelt?
No, and I think it was pretty clear. I said I was, then I wasn't, and I went ahead and did it. But in saying that,
Let's give him an opportunity to
you know,
respond.
something, I apologize to the people. Unlike any of you, when you do something, you don't want to apologize. I apologize to the people. We're moving
When
forward.
they do
we're
what?
building
They haven't
homes.
been in the
I find
situation
it
to
very
do
rich
anything.
that Bonnie Crombie say she builds homes. She built the least amount of homes in the entire province. Just compare to the new mayor. The new mayor's done more. Carolyn
that's
Parrish has
time.
done more in 7 months than you did in 10 years. That's
So you're
We'll
blaming
leave it there.
her
Doug
for the
Ford, thank you
failures
very
as a
much. Now,
mayor
all
that
of
the
leaders
province
here
should have been
made
doing.
many pledges and policy announcements. Perhaps you've heard them over the last few weeks. Here are some of them.
going to build the 401 Express Tunnel It will be the largest tunnel in the entire world.
Well, first of all, we would cancel Doug Ford's $2.2 billion subsidy to a foreign-owned mega spa.
The Ontario NDP will end encampments by supporting people and helping them find a home to live in.
We have a plan that will cut personal income taxes, that will cut small business taxes, and that will eliminate the HST off home heating and hydro.
Okay, you've heard the promises. Now let's talk about the plan, and we'll do that with Global News' Colin DeMello. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, David.
Colin, as many people will know, is the president of the Queen's Park Press Gallery, so we're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, and hello to all of the candidates. Good to be with you today. I'm here to ask you some questions on specific policies that you have been presenting to voters. You will have limited time, just 1 minute to answer, so we ask you to please talk about your policies and not that of your rivals.
You have to each answer. Another one of you will have the opportunity to ask a follow-up question and then debate back and forth. We've randomly selected who will be asking that follow-up.
We will begin with Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford. You have promised to build a tunnel under Highway 401, but you have not done a feasibility study or said what it will cost. Why should taxpayers give you a blank check?
Well, we know all 400 series highways are going to be maxed out in 10 years. You know, as the folks on the stage here, they don't believe in building highways. They said they're against the 413. They're against the Bradford bypass. They're against the tunnel.
Do you want to
they're
actually
against
mention
everything
why
to build.
people
So
are against
I guess
this?
my question to all three of them is, where's the traffic going to go? You know, Mike, you say, let's put it on the 407. What are you going to do in 10 years when it's maxed out? You say, put the trucks on there. Talk to the Trucking Association. They don't want it. We're going to invest in transportation, and the only
you build a
way we
fucking
can
tunnel
invest in
under a tunnel, then what
transportation
happens when
is
that
by
gets
having
full?
a strong economy. And all three of you have failed
Tunnels all the way
economy.
down.
You don't believe in creating new jobs. 'cause
That's
to
what I
create new
want, is to be
jobs,
stuck in a
you have to have
traffic
tax
jam in a
incentives. You have to
tunnel
put money
under a
back
traffic
into their
jam that's
businesses'
on the
pockets
surface
to
level.
invest in their people, into their technology.
There's an episode of
into
Doctor
infrastructure, and
Who
put money
called
back into
Gridlock.
people's pockets. That's the difference.
That's what I'm
Fundamental
thinking of right now.
difference between myself creating jobs and them chasing 300,000 jobs out
And
of our
that is time.
province.
Doug Ford, thank you very much. This is where Colin and I get to pass off the who gets to ask a question. And Bonnie Crombie, you now have the power to ask a follow-up question of Doug Ford.
Thank you, Doug. Doug, I have one question for you and one question only. After
Oh,
7
boy.
years of lies, why should anyone trust a word you say?
Well, first of all, action speaks louder than words, and people have seen us spend over $200 billion on infrastructure.
No, it's
No matter
already
it's
it's already been
$50 billion
stated
worth
or
of
asked to the
hospitals,
public
or,
that's watching.
$28
Is your
billion
life
in
better
building
now
roads
than
and
it was
highways,
7
or
years
Doug,
ago?
you put
billion
us
in
into
building
an
No.
extra $100
transit.
billion
See, the
of debt.
difference
How
is
does any one
the
government
difference-
spend $100 billion and pay 2.5 million people still don't have a family
That's the
doctor?
difference between
Doug,
us. I believe,
Doug, a fantasy
I
tunnel.
believe-
How dumb
I
is that,
believe
Doug?
in
40-year
investing in
project?
infrastructure.
Okay, let's give this
40
chance to answer.
I
that.
believe in
appreciate
building
that.
infrastructure.
How
Under the
dumb is
Liberals
that?
and NDP, there was nothing built. There was no subways. We're building the largest subway extension in all of North
Which has
America.
gone so far
We're
over
building
budget and
highways
over
and roads
time.
and bridges because we know one thing. There's $56 billion
They cut her
is
mic.
costing our economy
Okay, it's
every
time.
single
Doug,
year.
Okay,
this
let's give
tunnel-
Bonnie
Single
Crombie
year.
an opportunity to
Thank you.
respond.
And we're gonna get
Doug,
people
this
from
tunnel
point
is
A
a
to point
fantasy.
B.
This is a fantasy
Yeah, so is
project.
our subway,
It is a
right?
40-year
Back in
project. It won't be built in my lifetime. It will not alleviate any congestion. It will bankrupt the province at $150 billion. There are alternatives. Why don't you invest in the alternatives? Why don't you invest more in public transit? There's an alternative highway parallel. The 427 could be leveraged. Truck-only lanes on the 407. Doug, this is a fantasy that would bankrupt our province. No one believes you. You make other promises, and you don't get it done,
Okay,
Doug.
that marks time for us. I'll turn back to Colin now.
Thank you very much. Our next question is to Green Party leader Mike Schreiner. So you have promised to scrap the current plans to redevelop Ontario Place. What would you propose to do with that land instead?
Well, first of all, I think it is a huge mistake and an insult to the people of Ontario that the government is subsidizing a foreign-owned spa at a tune of $2.2 billion, privatizing public space. Ontario Place is for the people of Ontario. It's public space that should be publicly available, and unfortunately, the current government has torn down all the trees, and now they want to subsidize it. Imagine what an insult it is and how unfair it is to people across the province saying, I can't afford a home. Hospitals
There's
are
been a lot
closing in
more
my community.
coyote
I
attacks
can't get
on
access
neighborhood
to a
dogs
family
since they
doctor.
took down that
And
little
this
forest in the
government
middle of
is
Toronto.
subsidizing a foreign-owned spa at the tune of $2.2 billion. That is not what the people of Ontario want. They deserve better. They deserve fairness. That's exactly what the Ontario Greens are fighting for.
Mike Schreiner, thank you. I'll turn now to Doug Ford. You get a follow-up question. I would ask that you begin it with a question.
Well, first of all, we're building a world-class destination.
That
We're
nobody
going to
will
see
go
over
to.
5 to 6 million people go there.
No.
And under the Liberals and
Squid,
NDP and
who
the
the
Greens,
fuck is going
they
to
let
go
it
to a
deteriorate.
luxury
It just
spa
is
when you
just,
can't afford rent?
dandelions coming up and everything else. And we're going to build
Like,
an
the thing about
amphitheater that's
Ontario
gonna
Place
He's
is-
attract
supposed to ask a
millions of
question.
people.
Yeah.
Did you
And the
have
thing
have
about
50
Ontario Place
acres
is
of
that,
public realm
school
that we
trips
have
would
to
go
do
there. It
more
was a place for
informed
family,
by
for
the people
fun.
know
Do you have a
that.
question?
50 acres.
Do
We're
you
gonna
go
build
on
a
family
destination,
trips
the
to
most popular destination in
spas?
the entire province. And
right.
all these
And that-
people, ironically, they're
He's
gonna
not
show
even
up.
asking
We're
a
gonna build a new
question.
science center. They're
Okay,
all
that
showing
represents
up. Mark my
time
words.
there.
Couldn't even
You
ask a
can,
question.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Was there a question?
There was no
think there was a
question there,
question.
folks. Let's be clear. There was no question there because
commercial.
nobody can defend why you would waste $2.2 billion subsidizing a foreign-owned spa. If it's such a great destination, why are Ontario taxpayers on the hook for this? When our kids are learning in overcrowded classrooms, people can't afford homes, rural hospitals are closing, people can't find a doctor, and you're wasting $2.2 billion on this mega spa in downtown Toronto. It's the same kind of waste that the tens of billions that you're spending on this fantasy tunnel that will create traffic chaos in Toronto. I want to build things, but I want to build things that make sense for the people of Ontario, like homes they can afford.
I do want to give Doug Ford an opportunity to respond.
Well, first of all, let's address this.
Watch him
tunnel.
ask the
And
question
it's-
now.
It's going to be one of the largest tunnels in the
Let's
world.
address it.
And I know, I
We'll give
understand.
Doug Ford a
Address
You
it.
believe in bike lanes and riding bikes and planting trees. I get it, and you're good at that. So, but the problem is, you won't be able to afford the trees because the economy will go down the tube with all three of you. We're going to continue building transit, building infrastructure, getting people from point A to point B.
Bad
and we're
economy
gonna
means
gain
no
$56 billion
trees.
on the
Close to
economy
where
instead
people
of
work.
losing the economy.
Why don't we do that?
They're all
Why don't
great
we build
talkers,
homes
but
close to
none
where
of them
people
have
work?
solutions.
All right, and that is time. I'll turn back now to
Actually,
callers.
they've been
We
talking
have
about what their
another question
solutions
for
are.
NDP leader Marit Stiles. You have promised to end encampments. It is estimated that more than 80,000 Ontarians were homeless last year. What will your party do to end homelessness?
Well, first of all, I mean, the answer to homelessness is building homes. So the first thing that we announced as part of our big platform was Homes Ontario, which is where we get the government back in the business of finally building affordable, permanently affordable housing again. And we had programs like that up until the mid-90s when the Liberals in Ottawa and here, the Conservatives here in Ontario canceled all of that.
That is true.
We'd be way ahead right now if we still had those programs, but we don't because they canceled it. We need to get back in the business of building those permanently affordable homes. And really crucial in all of that is 60,000. So the 1.5 million homes, but 60,000 of those are supportive housing. And that's really important for a lot of the folks that we're talking about in our encampments right now. And let's be clear, there are encampments, there are homeless tent encampments in every corner of this province, in every community under this premier and his government. So we have to build supportive housing with wraparound support for people.
All right, and with that, we'll turn to Mike Schreiner with a follow-up question, please.
Yeah, I certainly support Ms. Stiles' plan to end encampments. We actually have to get back to building deeply affordable homes in this province. 93% were built before 1995. The question I have for you, though, is do we need to create a whole other government bureaucracy to do that? I've talked to nonprofit and co-op builders who have said, why don't you just flow money to us and we'll get it built? That would be more efficient and effective to achieve our shared
I'm
objective.
happy to respond to that, Mike, and thank you for your support. Look, every other province except Ontario has an organization that manages this and that coordinates it. And that's what we will need. And that means absolutely working with builders, working with nonprofits, working with municipalities. And I'll say this, our plan is built on the premise as well that we are going to provide a strong provincial partner. We're going to offer up provincial land where we can, right, to make sure we build that housing. But it's that partnership that's crucial. And I know you see it, and people out there see it all the time, that there's community organizations ready to go that want to build this housing, and yet no true provincial partner. So we need to show leadership. And at the provincial level, the NDP is ready to go, right? Again, every other province is doing this. We're not, and we're so far behind. And I would add as well that, if we're going to move forward quickly enough, we have to get going right away. I'm going to start this within the first 100 days that we form government. And that means as well getting Ontario building again, because right now, I would just add one other thing, which is that Ontario, and you know this as well, of course, is like building less housing than anywhere else in the country right now.
I'll stop you there because we only have 20 seconds left.
To 50s levels.
I agree with you. We need to get going right away. This is exactly why. Let's not create another bureaucracy to do it. We have a ministry in place. Let's just flow the money to the nonprofits and co-ops and permanent supportive builders so they can get going away.
All right, that is time.
Fair enough.
Mike Turner, thank you very much.
Our next question is for Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. Your party has promised to cut
That wasn't a bad
middle-income
answer.
taxes for middle-income earners, but your plan doesn't actually cut taxes for anyone earning less than $50,000. What will you do to help lower-income Ontarians?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I really thank you for that because people are hurting right now. I'm in the grocery store and I see moms picking up meat and putting it back down and going to the checkout aisle and holding their breath. So I thought, what can we do to make life more affordable?
Bothers me
for
how they're
people?
like, I
Yes,
see
we're
all
gonna
these
cut
other
small
people
business
struggling. It's
taxes,
not like I'm
but we're
one of
gonna
them,
cut
but
income
all these
taxes
other
for people
people.
earning $75,000 or less, and we're going to take the HST off home heating and hydro, and we're going to build homes that are more affordable. But for other folks entirely, we're doubling the ODSP for people who are living with disabilities. I believe in phased-in rent controls over a period of time. And by the way, we're going to look at auto insurance premiums because they're out of control. So overall, my goal is to cut your taxes, to grow the economy, much like I did in Mississauga. And I'm so proud of my record in Mississauga, attracting investment, creating jobs, setting us up for growth.
Isn't Mississauga like one of the
elected by
most like
large margins, because I think the people in Mississauga
wealth
had a lot of confidence
inequality
in what I did
places
to
in Ontario?
stimulate
That
the
is time.
economy and build jobs.
I
All right, thank you very much,
don't
Bonnie
know
Crombie.
the specifics
Mark
about
Stiles, you get the
Mississauga.
follow-up question to Bonnie Crombie.
I could be wrong, but it's
Well,
just more
I'm going
from
to take a slightly different tack. I
understanding
heard
all
a
the
few
people
things
who
there that
go there and live
I think
there
the
and
liberal
vacation there.
liberal leader needs to read some of her own policy on this. But I wanted to go after another thing, because what I'm finding increasingly as I go around the province is that people are paying out of pocket for healthcare, for actually things that we, as Canadians believe should be absolutely free. You should be able to access healthcare when and where you need it, not out of pocket. And I was really shocked to see that the Liberal leader, that her party has received $25,000 in donations from private healthcare insiders.
Do you have a question?
And I'd like to know how she can stand here and say she's going to save healthcare, which, by the way, was created. Holloway Healthcare was created under the previous Liberal government, when she's receiving those kinds of donations from private healthcare providers.
Okay, we'll get.
Yeah,
Bonnie
I
Crombie.
think the NDP leader is envious of my fundraising record to date. I will say that the NDP thinks that money grows on trees.
NDP has more donors
You just
because
can't
they're
promise
generally speaking
everything to
more
everyone all the time. That's just not a serious
regular
plan.
people.
It's not a serious plan. When I was the mayor of Mississauga, I had to balance my budget. I never ran a
don't think
deficit.
you're
I
answering my
did that
question.
for the past 10 years. I balanced my books for 10 years, just
asking-
like people have
maybe
to
I need
do
to be
at
more
home.
clear.
They have to balance their budgets at home. They know that they have to save in bad times. That's the difference between me
I think I need to
and
ask this
you.
question a little bit more clearly, maybe. You said that you are going to fix the healthcare crisis, that a previous Liberal government, I will argue, started the whole Holloway healthcare crisis, right? You don't take responsibility for that, but you also will not take responsibility for the fact that you have collected $25,000 from private healthcare insiders at a time when we are seeing people literally having to pay out of pocket under Doug Ford's government for healthcare. You know, Ontarians are very clear. They do not want to head in that
certainly,
direction.
we follow the rules to the T. Absolutely. And
So
I
why
have
are you
a plan
collecting
Guys,
that will,
our
I have a plan
our
that will invest
corruption
$3
was
billion,
legal.
not
Okay,
the 1.8
it's
that the
okay.
Premier is going to
5
do.
seconds.
How do we know it's not
$3
gonna go
billion
to,
to
private
ensure that
healthcare?
everyone in Ontario
How do we
has
know
a
it's not
family
gonna go
doctor.
to
All these
healthcare?
private
That is
health
time.
corporations
That
were
is time.
completely allowed to
Paula,
give me all that
thank you
money.
very much.
Thank you, David.
Good to see you.
There's
Now,
no
we asked
reason
some
why they
voters
just
What, was
give
I
me
gonna
that
say
things
money.
they have
no?
not
Yeah.
been hearing leaders talk about
It's not like they're
during the election
expecting
campaign.
anything in return.
Car theft, crime on the streets, the drugs, and the guns. Never used to be like that.
The waiting time at the emergency, it's like hours and hours. I'm talking from my own experience.
I think they need to talk about healthcare, and I think
Like
they
in the
need
background,
to talk about
eggs for life.
education so badly.
A lot of people are suffering it. Right now, there is a situation with the food bank. That shouldn't be happening. This is Canada.
Well, for this next segment, Siobhan Morris joins us. She is the Queen's Park Bureau Chief for CTV News. Siobhan, hello.
Hello, thank you, David. Hello, candidates. I want to ask you some questions about things that are not in your platform. You'll have 1 minute to give us your position.
I actually
There
appreciate
is
that
no open
CBC is
debate
bringing
in this
in
section.
Global
We'll
and
begin
CTV
with
to ask
Martin Stiles.
questions.
You have
That
rightfully
at least
criticized the
allows
government's
for a little
closure
bit of
supervised drug consumption
transparent
sites, but you've given no
Yeah.
details about how you will
consolidation
respond to the
of media.
addictions
'Cause
crisis. What is your
I
plan?
rather CBC
Well,
be
first of all,
inviting journalists to
look,
come
as
ask
I've
questions
traveled around the
than
province,
private
without
corporations
question,
to host these debates and then,
addiction and
you know,
mental health care
paywall them
crisis is
Yeah,
right
this
there.
is
or
a
It is
prevent
in
them
every
being
community, in
broadcasted.
every corner
Yeah,
of
this is a
province,
joint
and it has
production, I think,
certainly
between a
gotten
lot of
much
different
worse in the last
organizations,
7 years.
like news
Go to
organizations.
Sudbury, for example, you see that corner with all the white crosses that was built by a woman who lost her son Miles to an overdose. The answer to addiction is healthcare, right? That means that you do not take resources out of communities without actually putting back more and better resources. And that's not what we've seen under Doug Ford and the Conservative government. We saw them take away supports and not replace them. And I like the healthcare hub idea. That came from communities. But it is a drop in the bucket what Doug Ford and the Conservatives are proposing. It will not address the addiction crisis. When somebody needs help, they need it right away, not 2 months later, not a year later. They need it immediately.
All right, Margaret Stiles, thank you.
The next question is for Doug Ford. You promised in 2018 to end hallway health care, but overcrowding in hospitals now is worse than it was then. Why should voters believe that you will fix the problem now?
Because
We
we've
can see if he
invested
answers
more than
the-
any other government. We've invested over
Nope.
$33 billion, over 30% increase. We're actually building medical schools for the first
That's
time in
answering
some
the
areas
question.
over 100 years. As the Liberals got rid of medical school seats, we're adding hundreds and
What does
hundreds.
medical schools
We've
have to do with
registered over
hallway healthcare?
15,000
It's
batches,
gotten
100,000
worse under you, Doug
nurses.
Ford.
And the way we do
Worse.
this, the foundation of healthcare, is very simple. You have a strong economy. That's why we've been able to
He's
invest
mentioning an
in
economy.
building more medical schools, having more
So I guess the
doctors. We're
economy
paying
You know
for
how to
tuition
solve
paid
heart
for.
disease?
All
A
doctors
stronger
are going to
economy.
stay in primary care.
Yeah.
You know
We're
how
getting
to fix
tuition
brain
paid for.
cancer?
We're paying for all
Stronger
their nurses right across
Do you
the
know how
oh my
people go
God.
on more
for
dates?
their education that none
Strong
of these
economy.
parties
Stronger
have ever
economy.
done. Nurse practitioners,
Better
we're
grooming your
taking care of
pets.
them on their education
Strong economy.
Stronger
as
economy.
well. We're doing everything
Reverse
we
gray
can to
hairs.
build the system along
Stronger
with bringing
economy.
Dr. Jane Philpott in that
Yep.
will connect every single
The best way
person
to buy
to a
crypto?
primary caregiver.
Stronger
Stronger
economy.
economy.
Doug Ford, thank you very much. Siobhan.
A question now for Mike Schreiner. For 10 years, you've been vowing to get
Best
rid
way
of
to change a
Catholic
light
school
bulb?
boards, merge them with public boards.
Stronger economy.
Your new platform
best
doesn't
topping on
mention
a
that. Why
poutine?
not?
Yeah, because
Stronger
right
economy.
now we have a crisis in our
Like,
public education system.
yeah, I can
The
go
Ford
forever.
government has
It's
cut
bad.
per pupil funding for education by $1,500. The priority for people right now is to shore up our public education system. And that means supporting both our public and Catholic boards to hire more teachers, educational assistants, special educators, and just caring adults, social workers, so our students have the supports they need. I think coming out of the disruptions from the pandemic, we need to shore up our public education system. And unfortunately, the current government has failed to do that. Ontario Greens are committed to reversing the $1,500 per student cut. We will invest in clearing the repair backlog, and we will ensure that we can lower class sizes because we would hire caring adults in our schools.
All right, Mike Schreiner,
But did he
thank you.
actually
Siobhan.
been?
We turn now
Because
to
I
Bonnie
like the
Crombie.
idea of
You
getting
have
rid of
opposed
the
building
Catholic
new
school board,
highways in the
publicly
GTA, but
funded.
you haven't talked really about how you would address the issue of traffic congestion. What is your plan to tackle gridlock?
So certainly there are a lot of alternatives, and I will say this government has not acted on any of them. We need to invest more in our public transit systems. Look at the GO train lines. London, town of London has been promised a GO train line. It wasn't delivered. All-day two-way GO train service on the Milton line. It was promised again. It was never delivered. We're talking about $150 billion fantasy tunnels rather than utilizing existing resources.
Fantasy
like,
tunnel just sounds
leveraging
really
the
dirty.
427 or truck-only lanes on the 407. There's a lot more public infrastructure that can be built, public transit that we need to invest in. Right across the province, look at the highways in the north, twinning the 2+1 lanes in 11 and 17, adding the extra 68 kilometers on Highway 69 in the north, because those roads are so treacherous and we rely on them. But here in the GTA, invest more in public transit to move people around. Here is where the needs are. People need to get to their jobs, and they need to get to their appointments and to their school.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you very much. And Siobhan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Thanks, Siobhan.
Thanks, Siobhan.
Ontario, of course, is a beautiful, vast, and varied province with unlimited options for leisure
Is this just a
activities.
commercial,
As we
or-
step away briefly from policy to the personal.
Oh, are we
Looking
going to ask
for an
about their
answer in
first jobs
15
again?
seconds or less. We're basically, this is a
So
tense
on your
room
first
right now.
date,
I don't
how
mind
far
telling
did you
So
go?
we're just going with a little bit of something to break that tension. I'm going to start with Doug Ford and ask you a question I'll ask everyone here. If you have the weekend off from work, where do you go in this province?
Everyone knows he
I
goes to
never
his
stop
cottage.
working. I return calls. I have a cottage that I think I saw twice last year for 5 hours to cut the grass and came home.
That's bullshit.
That's what I'm consumed about.
I
really
remember
am.
another
I'm-
particular
I wake
time
up
that
in the
he was at
morning
his cottage.
Early 5:30, 6
Another like
o'clock, and
significant
return
moment
calls,
when
and people
this
know
guy
across
was
the
at his
province,
cottage. Now, what,
Like
what
every
was
time
that
there's a
again?
crisis,
So
he's at his
I
cottage.
What was that? There was
Doug
some
Ford,
sort
thank you.
of
Mike Schreiner, same question. You got a
brigade
weekend off from work, where do you go in this province?
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, I work
group
really hard,
of
David, but I also
people
spend
in
a
a
lot of time with my
line,
family.
for like
My family and I
miles.
like to
And
go hiking
And
in
they were
and
really-
around
what do you
Guelph.
call
Yeah,
We
they
have
were on their
amazing
horns a
trails in Guelph. I
lot.
love to hike along the Niagara Escarpment. I think it's really important to spend time with my
Niagara
family.
that? Oh,
Escarpment
right,
is
a
actually really
pond
nice.
boy.
Mike Schreiner, I'll turn
Yeah.
to Bonnie Crombie.
I
Get a
do.
weekend
I
off, where
like
do
to
you
go to the Niagara
goodness, I
Escarpment
love
on my
nature
days
and I
off.
love spending time with my family as well. And my family are very physically fit, and we're a little competitive about it. So my
Oh,
destination
right.
is
Recently,
gonna
she
be
said
Thunder
that
Bay
her and
because
Doug
they have
Ford
great
should do
rock climbing
push-ups.
in Thunder Bay, and I can't wait to go out and see it. And some of the other things we'll do is, of course, pickleball, because it's so popular
I can't
right
wait
now.
for
I
like
love pickleball.
20 years from now
Mark
when
Stiles, a turn to
it's
you finally.
instead of a
Get a
debate, it's
weekend
just
off, where do you go in
Well,
Ontario?
I
Mr.
mean,
Beast
you know, we're all
games
going to say we
Yeah.
work harder
with
than
all
anybody else.
our
So, you know,
leaders.
there's that. But I will say I'm a swimmer, and I just love swimming in Ontario lakes. You give me a
Okay,
lake, I will swim there. I have yet,
that's a
though, I
plus
will
one
say
for me.
honestly,
As
ever
a
swum in
former
Lake
swimmer,
Superior. So that
that's
is
a
my
plus one.
next try,
I like
although
people
here
who
it's
can swim.
pretty cold.
Well, I like Mike
So
Schreiner
I'm going to
saying
wait
the
until
Niagara
summer,
Escarpment because
obviously.
that
I'm gonna
is an
swim
awesome
a
place to go
lot.
It's a
hiking.
great place to swim.
It
I'll
is,
tell
I
you,
know, it's
it is.
beautiful.
I've done it. It's
Warmer,
great.
though. Lake.
Maybe we'll all meet up there.
We'll all meet there.
Let's turn back to policy with a look at education. Another reminder that if anyone here makes a claim about one of their opponents in their answer, then that person gets extra uninterrupted time to respond. You get 1 minute each to respond to this question, and I'll start with Marc Stiles. Colleges across this province are chopping programs, and they're doing this in the wake of successive provincial governments saying to them, go and get revenue from international students. We know the bottom's fallen out of that. A lot of that money is gone. So how do you fix what has become a crisis for many colleges?
Oh, well, thanks for the question. Yeah, and you know, as I travel around Ontario, I got to tell you, I'm met almost everywhere I go by workers and students at our colleges, at our universities, who are very, very deeply worried. Communities that depend on the economy of those institutions as well, what that's going to mean for communities as we're seeing programs cut, programs that students need, that we need if we're going to have the skilled workforce that we need to drive this economy and make us more
And a lot of these
self-reliant,
international
particularly
students were
in
being
the face
abused and
of,
scammed
Trump's
and all that
terrorist
sort of
threats.
stuff.
So it's Absolutely essential. We are funding at the lowest rate of any province in Canada right now. That is shameful. The answer isn't to increase tuitions. The answer is to properly fund post-secondary institutions. And I will add that the
Free college and
reliance on international
university.
students breaks my heart. A lot of those young people wanted to come here to build a life.
Zeke that
They are
beast.
part of
Thank
our
you so
future,
much for the
but we have to
$10.
properly fund our post-secondary
I'm
institutions.
going to
right,
shut
Mark
them up so
Stiles,
I
thank
can
you. I'll
actually
turn
pay
to Doug
attention to
Ford
people who are
on
paying
the
me.
financial challenges
Just showing
facing
some love.
colleges.
Love Mark's remarks,
Yeah, when
having
we
him
settle
here with
financial
us.
challenges
To me,
on the
Mike
funding
sounds
thank
good.
you.
foreign students,
As an
we jumped
outsider with
from
no knowledge and first time
0 to
watching a Canadian
$2.3
debate. Yeah,
billion.
Mark and I will talk a bit
We
more
cut
after this
tuition
too.
the exact year
I
we
think
got
that's
elected.
you're on
We
board
cut
for
it by
that.
10%.
But
We've
yeah,
Oh
never
yeah, I can do it.
increased it. We're
yeah.
making sure
Thank you
that
so much.
Debrief.
students
Yeah.
focus for
Thank you so
jobs of
much,
the future.
Zeke the Beast, for
You know
that.
what we did find out? A couple of classes, David had 4 or 5 people in it, and we thought that's ridiculous. You know, like a basket weaving course. Let's focus on STEM. We graduate more
Basket
STEM students
weaving.
than
Oh my
anywhere in the
God.
entire North America. Over
What is this,
70,000
like
STEM
2008?
students, science,
Basket weaving
technology,
and
engineering,
poutine
and
It
math.
sounds like
making.
a joke from
Those
College
are the
Humor
jobs of the
that I would have
future. We're going to
seen
continue
when I
investing in,
was in
not
like
to
early
mention the
high
skilled
school.
trades. There's a reason why all the trade unions are supporting us. At one time, used to support you, but they know there's no future with any of your parties. And we're spending over $2.5 billion training skilled workers. And we've seen women, a 30% increase
All right,
with
that
women
is
in the
time.
skilled trades.
All right. Doug Ford, thank you. Bonnie Crombie.
I think it's so important to educate our kids and prepare them for the jobs of tomorrow. And we don't even know what those jobs will look like now that AI is here, and it will change a lot of things for us. But what I do know is Doug Ford has set up a Ponzi scheme for our universities and our colleges, that they're relying on foreign students because he never capped them. He never capped them as they should have. My plan would be to cap foreign students at 10% so our kids have more space and reliance. I'm also going to increase OSAP for our students and extend the amount of time that they have to pay it back and increase the threshold in which it kicks in when they have to pay it back. But let's
Free
fund our
college and
colleges
university.
universities
Free
properly.
college and
They only
university.
currently get 30% of their operating funding from the province. Every other province gives them up to 60%, and they're forced to rely on endowments and their reserves. And of course, they're closing departments and laying off people because this government has created a Ponzi scheme, and it is not sustainable, and we need to cap foreign students.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you. I'll turn finally on this to Mike Schreiner.
Yeah, David, we have to have an honest conversation with the people of Ontario. We have the lowest funding for post-secondary education of any province in the country. It would take an additional $5 billion in Ontario just to get to the provincial average. So what are the real-world implications of that? Colleges cutting programs to train people in the trades, train nurses, train people for vital jobs. I can tell you, as somebody who's started a number of businesses, I can't tell you how important it is to have our post-secondary education sector available to train the workers for my businesses and businesses across this province. Those programs are being cut. The $1.3 billion that was given to universities and colleges wasn't even enough to make up for the loss in funding from international students. We will not solve this crisis. We will not generate the trained workers we need for our economy if we don't fix this.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thanks very much. I'm going to turn back briefly to Doug Ford because I didn't catch it. Bonnie Crombie, evidently, you said his name, and that gives him a brief time to
She
respond.
invoked the name.
Well, first of all, just to inform Bonnie.
Yeah, this
that
format
it's the
really
federal
does give
government, not the
undue
province,
time to Doug
that
Ford to
cut the
just spew
foreign
more
students,
shit.
Just to inform you, but in saying that, we are training over 1 million students. Just think of this: skills development fund, $2.5 billion. We've already seen 600,000 people go through the system in all areas, not just skilled trades, but other skills that
Less
they
than
have
half
out
of the
there.
people in this
We're going to
province without a
continue
family doctor.
investing in the people and the students of this province.
We're going to continue.
Unlike they've ever seen before, which we're doing.
We'll continue.
I like
on
that.
this
You're
same
just saying
subject,
nonsense. We're going to move
post-secondary
on.
education as it faces huge financial challenges. We're now going to have two leaders facing off one-on-one for 2 minutes. We'll turn to Marit Stiles and Doug Ford for this. First word to you, Marit Stiles.
Well, I want to start with something that Doug said about the kids and the graduating rates. Like, we are seeing a lot of people graduating from STEM programs in universities and colleges, but I want to shift this a bit because I think that they're graduating in spite of this government and in spite of actually everything they've experienced coming up through our publicly funded education system in the last few years. And so I want to ask more specifically about that, because education is the reason that I first ran for public office. I think kids are our future. And I think the investments that we make now in our publicly funded education system are crucial to their success, but also to our success in Ontario. And so I want to ask Doug Ford why, after everything our children went through, everything they went through in the difficult years around the pandemic, why you cut $1,500 per student from our education system and drove education workers and teachers out of our schools.
Well, first of all, that's an inaccurate statement. I'm going to tell you what the facts are. I know, and the three of you aren't very good with numbers, but the fact is, no one's ever invested more in education than we have.
God.
We've invested
Every
$40
single
billion
time. No
in
one has
education.
done more than we
That's
have.
$10 billion more.
Doug,
If no one has done more than what they have, then why does everything suck so much
You know
more
something?
now?
We actually hired 9,000 more educators.
No, Doug.
Even though the population of students have been
Here's the
stagnant around
thing,
2
Doug,
million,
parents know that you're
9,000
not
more
telling the
educators.
truth about this.
As you two are closing 600 schools,
Doug,
we're building $16
parents
billion
know.
of schools. As you were laying off teachers, we're hiring
So
more
I'd like to get back
more
in here, if I
teachers.
may, David.
That's the
Doug,
difference.
look,
The foundation of education is
with kids
built
in
on our
schools,
economy.
Parents with kids in our schools right now, they know that that's not true, okay? Classrooms, the class sizes are huge. We cannot find education assistants or teachers or other caring, qualified adults to work in our schools because you took them to court.
What about
because you
autism
tried to
funding,
freeze their
Doug?
wages,
What did you
but
do
you
to
have
that?
actually reduced funding by $1,500 per student.
That is,
That's
I'll
why.
have to stop us
Funding
there
for
just to keep
autistic
us on
kids.
time
What
here. The
happened to
next
that in
debate's
their
going to happen
education?
between Bonnie Crombie and Mike Schreiner. You have 2 minutes. First word to you, Mike Schreiner.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Crombie. As you know, our education system is hurting. Our post-secondary education system is so underfunded, and K-12 is underfunded.
Absolutely.
The Ontario Greens are the only party that's actually put forward a fully costed platform that shows how we can afford to reverse the $1,500 cut brought in by this government in K-12 education.
I'm so glad you said
We've shown
that.
how we can increase funding, base budget funding for our colleges and universities. Will the Liberals bring forward a costed platform so people have the transparency
for that
they need to make a
question.
decision in this election?
Thank you for the question, Mike. And yes, absolutely, we will bring in a costed platform. But you know what I also wanted to refer to is the unemployment rate amongst our youth. They come out of their skill training, whether skill training or colleges and universities, and then 17% are unemployed. They can't find jobs. So I'm going to create 40,000 jobs for them through apprenticeship programs and other programs through our companies, and we're going to get them back to work. That is my commitment to our young people, to create 40,000 new jobs to smash that unemployment rate in half. But you're quite right. Even in our elementary schools and our high schools,
Speaking of
we're
smashing,
overcrowded,
there's a like
and the
button.
schools are crumbling. Teachers are forced to pay for supplies from their
Like,
own pocket.
comment, and
They don't even
subscribe.
have children. Our youth don't even
Mash
have a
that
textbook, one
button.
for each child.
In
Can I ask
the
a-
non-
can I ask just a follow-up?
tunnel
Sorry, don't want to
way.
interrupt. But it's just, when are we going to see the cost
In the
of platform?
non-fantasy
Because I think
tunnel
people,
way.
like, election day's a couple weeks away. People want to know that when we're all up here making promises, and these promises, they're like a sacred trust with people.
I agree.
And they want to know how
I
we're going to pay
agree.
for it.
Let's get an
The
answer.
Ontario
to that.
so
Greens
Yeah,
have
right.
no,
lost
we
their-
would absolutely have our platform
Wow.
released. And I would think every one of us on this stage should make that commitment, David. Why don't you ask each one of us whether they will release their platforms costed?
I'll give you the opportunity to do that because you will have in your closing statements the opportunity to do that. We have a lot of issues facing this province, and trying to narrow them down is a challenge.
You see, I
Housing,
would love
absolutely
for
a
somebody
big
like
one.
me,
And
you know,
so
somebody
each of
living
you
with
will have 1
disabilities,
minute
to be able to go
answer
up there
in
and
these
ask a
questions.
question
Bonnie
directly to
Crombie, I'll
Doug
start
Ford
with
about
you.
it.
Our home is our safe place. It's
Not a
supposed to be.
reporter, but somebody who
for
is,
many
like,
renters, they
directly
face the threat
affected by
rent
some of these
eviction,
policies.
or a landlord saying, I'm going to move in, really just as a way to get them out. On the flip side of the coin, you have many landlords who have tenants who don't pay. And the system takes months to be able to try to get them out. What is your fix for renting in Ontario?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So the fix is to fix the landlord and tenant board, because I hear it from both sides. I hear about the dem evictions and the rent evictions, and I hear from the landlords that they're not collecting rent either. So the system isn't fair. Adjudicators haven't been appointed. My pledge is to fix the backlog in the landlord and tenant board within the first 3 months. There are 53,000 cases outstanding. I'm not sure what has happened over the past 7 years, but certainly there are not adjudicators
Part of it was a
been
pandemic.
appointed to clear that backlog. But listen, I've got 3 kids. They can barely afford their rent. They're not putting any money away to hopefully buy a home one day. 2 of them got married this summer, and they want to start a family. And there aren't homes being built in Ontario, and not ones that our young people can afford. Alberta, BC, Quebec, they're eating our lunch. They have figured out home building. We haven't here. So I'm making a commitment that I'm going to reduce the price of your home by removing those hidden taxes called development charges, but reducing the price by $170,000.
That is time.
Thank you.
We'll have to leave it there. Bonnie Crombie, Doug Ford, I will turn to you. What is your fix for renting in Ontario?
Oh, my goodness. When she's saying that she's going to get rid of development charges, all she did is increase taxes in Mississauga.
Why don't you
And
answer
as
the
I said
fucking
before,
question,
Mayor
Doug
Carolyn
Ford?
Parrish has done more in 10 months, getting rid of the development charges, at least 50%, more incentives than you have in 10 years, Bonnie. Isn't it amazing
What
when you
is
have
your
new
fix
leadership
for
in
Ontario's
Mississauga,
renters and
their
landlords?
taxes are
It's
going
right
to be
there on the
under
screen.
control right now. But we led the charge across the country in getting rid of the HST for purpose-built rentals. Now we have a record amount of purpose-built rentals. We're putting over $2 billion into infrastructure, the water, the sewers, the pipes that are needed.
Yeah, we're
and
going
that's
to build
going
more
right
rentals
across the
people can't
province
afford.
That will be able to build an additional 1 million homes. That's what these communities want. They want infrastructure. But guess what? None of this can happen under their 3 watches, because I'll tell you, the economy would go down quicker than the Canadian bobsled downhill.
Economy.
Oh my
We're the only
gosh.
ones that have
Would
the
go down
economy
faster
moving.
than
We'll
Canadian
continue to have the
bobsled in
economy
the summer
moving.
on
We'll
water, eh?
generate more income.
Doug
Don't
Ford,
you
I'll hold there
know?
with you. Thank you very much, Bonnie Crombie. You heard your name being said by Doug Ford. You get 30
over and
seconds
over again.
to
You know,
respond.
it's really funny because Doug Ford stood in the legislature and heaped praise on me and on my record and said what a fantastic job creator I was and how the economy was booming in Mississauga and that I had kept all my promises as mayor. And we've got that going out viral because I just want to remind him that, you know, he may think differently today, but back when I was mayor, he thought I was doing a pretty incredible job. And I wanted to
Okay,
mention as
Bonnie Crombie's time. Please go ahead. Yeah. You have 5 more seconds.
I have 5 more, sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to add as well that we would phase in rent controls over a period of time. I think that would be really helpful to people who can't afford their rent today. And while we make it more affordable to buy a home, our kids are losing the dream of buying a
We'll have
home.
to leave it
Some of
there.
them even want to leave the province.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you very much. I've got to turn now to Mike Schreiner. A reminder, the question is, what is your fix for renting in Ontario?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my colleague Ashlyn Clancy, MPP for Kitchener Centre, who put forward the most comprehensive bill in Ontario to protect renters, bringing back rent control, restrictions around above guideline rent increases, restrictions against rent evictions, because we need to protect renters in this province. Ways to fix the landlord-tenant board that works for landlords and for tenants. David, we have a whole generation, my daughter's generation, saying, we're never going to be able to afford a home, let alone pay the rent. That's exactly why the Ontario Greens have committed to building 2 million homes and removing the restrictions to build missing middle houses, 6 to 11-story multi-residential buildings in large urban centers. But unfortunately, the government said no to that bill, like they said no to my bill to build more homes that you can afford in the communities you know and love. We have to start getting back to building. We need a government that will say yes.
All right, that's time. Mike Schreiner, thank you very much. There was you said Doug Ford's name.
I don't think I did.
No, I don't think you did.
Well, let's
You
pretend.
said the
No,
government.
no, I
Excuse
don't
me,
think
you
you
said
did.
the
No,
government.
actually, no.
The
No, I
voices
didn't.
in
I
my
didn't
head
hear
are
it.
telling me
Did
that.
you hear
Well,
it?
just,
Did you?
you
No,
know something,
I didn't
we've
hear it.
hired more adjudicators and landlord-tenant board. It's actually, the numbers are actually going down now. We're going to make sure we have some of the toughest laws to protect tenants. But as you were saying, Dave, some people abuse that and they stay in there for a year. We're going to make sure we clear up the
Far more
backlog.
landlords are abusive than
What
there
this
are
comes down
tenants that
to
are.
is
No,
they
that's-
believe
yeah.
in higher taxes, new taxes, any taxes. That's what they believe in. And you've proved it. You voted against us every single time. I
All
don't
right,
believe
that
in
is,
taxing the people.
That is
They do.
time.
I believe in taxing the
we're
rich.
running short on the clock. Marit Stiles, fix for renting in Ontario.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, first of all, these two, once again, fighting over who builds the least housing in the middle of a housing crisis. Go figure. But look, Doug Ford has talked a lot, a good game about housing, but where is the housing, Doug? Where is it? Not being built. And we know, as I mentioned previously in this debate, that rent is up on average of 38% since 2018 when his government came to power. We have generations of people in this province who are never going to be able to imagine owning a home under this government. I want to tell you, though, about a woman named Lynn, 64 years old. I met her in Ottawa. She lost her home. She was renting. When she went into the hospital for some issues, she came out, rent was through the roof, couldn't afford it, bad luck.
Do these
ends up
individualized
living out of her
stories
car for
about some
8 weeks
person
before
they
she could get
heard
into a
from
shelter. She
that
said to me,
do
please
anything
raise
for
this
you
issue
anymore?
with Doug Ford. Please tell him, never in a million years would I've imagined myself here. The
Not
answer to
really,
what
because they've
Lynn
always
needs
just
is
seemed
rent control,
tokenized.
and it is truly affordable homes. The
Very
NDP is the only
performative and
party that
cherry
is
pick
actually
stories.
committed to real rent control and building truly permanently affordable housing.
Like,
Mark
if
Stiles,
you're
thank
the
you. Doug
person that's
Ford,
the
you get 30
example,
more
do you think
seconds.
to
Your name
yourself,
was mentioned.
oh, wow, she said
Well,
my
we
story,
believe in making sure
and
that
then
we
just go back
continue
to like
building
watching
more
your
and
life
more. And
become
you
more
know what it is, Mara? All you have to do
difficult?
is look outside the
But at
door.
least they said your
There's
story
more
on
cranes,
TV.
and
Like,
I want to do more,
it just
believe
doesn't
me,
feel
because I understand there's more
I've
genuine.
cranes
got to
going
be
up
a
in Toronto, right in your
token.
own backyard, than in New York and Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, and a few other cities combined. So they're being built up. But do you know what we need to do? We need to cut the red tape. We need to get rid of the development charges and all the
Didn't you
fees,
have
the parks
7
fees,
years
that
to cut
fees.
red tape?
And again, I just believe is in making sure
Like,
you
that's
put
something
have to
that
cut you
these
off there
other
because
leaders
we're
need to
moving
be
to an open
impressing
debate
all the
on
time. You've
housing.
had
Doug Ford
7
going to
years,
begin
7
here. The rest
years,
of you can
7
jump
years
in
to
as
do
you see
everything you're
fit.
talking
Plenty
about.
of
7
talk about
years.
building new homes. The challenge is many developers not really doing all that much building. Doug Ford, how would you change that?
Well, first of all, you have to have people that can afford a home, and how you do that is by employing
Strong
people, not
economy.
taxing them to
Doug,
death.
I'm going to continue.
More money. We
But
put
that's
more
right.
money
We
into
have
the
more
pockets.
people unemployed
The
today
three
than
of
we've
you
had in a
believe in
decade.
taxing
I just
people
want
to
to start
death.
by saying,
Under
Doug,
your watch, 300,000 jobs were lost
Doug, you've got,
immediately.
David, I'm going to jump
850,000
in here.
people
Just
jump in.
have a bigger job and a better
Just jump in and start talking over everyone.
Mr. Ford has said
You know?
we're raising taxes on housing. He's absolutely wrong. Our first-time home buyers
taxes
plan
on everyone.
would lower
Okay.
taxes and
I'm just
fees
gonna
so
jump in
you
here.
can
We're
afford a
getting
home
into
Doug
it
Ford
here.
does
in
just
your
kind of
community know and love.
We'll shut this
Let's
down.
be
We're going to
honest.
shut
speak whatever he
it down.
wants.
Shutting it down.
Doesn't really have to like
Move
get
on
fact checked at
to
all.
our next subject, and that is climate. Given the time frame we're up against, we have 30 seconds on that. Mike Schreiner, I start with you. It would appear that the federal carbon tax, as it currently exists, is going to
the
disappear.
time.
How do you reduce emissions quickly?
It's not like climate's important.
Addressing climate starts with protecting the people and places we love in this province. We have to protect Ontario from Mr. Ford's attack on our farmlands, our wetlands, and our greenbelt. We need to
Largest
ensure
greenbelt in the
that we
world.
protect the nature that protects us from these unsafe weather events caused by the burning of fossil fuels. We need to stop the government from ramping up fossil gas plants, which will increase electricity prices and pollution. And we need to stop subsidizing big oil and gas companies.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. Mart Stiles.
Well, I mean, first of all, yeah, we absolutely have to protect our farmland. You saw under Doug Ford, he wanted to carve up one of the most important carbon sinks that we have in this province, the Greenbelt. And that's what Doug Ford will do. Every time he says one thing in front of the camera and another thing behind closed doors, you can't trust him on this. And with somebody, making some big changes in the South, where we're going to have to step up as a province, I think, in a bigger way to promote climate action. I just want to say thank you to all of those young people who are fighting so hard for climate action in the province of Ontario.
Okay, that is time. I'll turn to Doug Ford.
Do you know what killed more jobs than anything? Is the carbon tax. The queen of the carbon tax, Bonnie Crombie, she believes in the carbon tax. And my other two colleagues here, they love the carbon tax. And it just doesn't cut it.
The question was
We
on
have
climate
the
change.
greatest reduction of emissions anywhere. We're at 90% clean energy.
It's like, here's a
one of the
problem,
cleanest
Doug,
grids
for
in the entire
taxes,
world. And do you know how we
economy.
did it? We invested. We invested with DeFasco and Algoma, putting electric arc furnaces in. That's like taking 2
And what
million
happened to
cars
all
off
those
the road.
green
We're building the
projects that
Ontario
the Liberal
line.
government
That is
had
taking
started
28,000
when he
cars
first
off
got
the
into
road.
office,
Okay, I'll have to jump in
that
on
he
you, Doug
canceled the
Ford and Bonnie Crombie.
contracts, causing
Unfortunately, Doug, you don't
taxpayers
get to
millions
play
of
to real
dollars?
people because you You were raised privileged with a silver spoon in your mouth. You didn't have to work for anything. You got a company handed to you, Doug, so you don't understand how expensive things are today. I bet you couldn't tell me what the cost of eggs are. I am the first Liberal to stand up and say it's too expensive to have a consumer carbon tax. I was the first Liberal to say there will be no tax on consumers. There will be no carbon tax, Doug. I have said that repeatedly, but you just like your friend Donald Trump make things up. You are saying lies.
That is time. Thank you. We'll continue moving on.
Well, at least that's actual.
Have the leaders over for dinner to your house. What would you make them exactly?
Simple things
What?
like the soup, because we show
If you could have them over to your house, what would dinner would you?
Groceries.
Hamburgers.
So this is what I mean about like we do not need to be this Canadian.
Yeah.
And the best French fries in the city.
No, I just treat them to my cooking and watch them, keel over the toilet and vomit it up.
Cocktail, some wine.
I mean, I will say I actually can cook.
Maybe
So.
some pasta.
I'm
maybe
shit at it.
I would put them.
They
something.
deserve my cooking. That's where it's at. They all deserve my cooking.
In Canada, Toronto, it's lots of culture to share, lots of different perspectives and viewpoints, and that's part of being Canadian you love is sharing your difference in cultures.
That's what some Ontarians told us they would prepare for these leaders. So as we try to have a bit of a lighter moment here, if you had the other leaders over for dinner, what would you make? 15 seconds.
Oh God, they're asking
boiled
each
dinner
other.
from back home in Newfoundland. Very, very.
This is a
very
commercial-free
cabbage, salt,
debate.
meat.
We are
Potatoes,
1
a lot of us
hour
could probably
and
relate to.
20 minutes in,
Delicious, and I make a
and
really
this
good
is
one.
the
Mark
third
Stiles, thank you,
question
Doug Ford.
that is
Macaroni and cheese.
pointless.
All right, very simple. We'll turn to Mike Schreiner.
I love making homemade pizza with all Ontario ingredients, which is why we need to protect Ontario's farmland.
Nice.
Bonnie Crombie.
So I'm Polish, as you know, and I grew up with my grandparents.
Actually, I did not know
and
that.
I learned to cook under my grandmother's wing. And so, of course, you're going to get pierogis in cabbage rolls, and you're going to get borscht, beet soup, and you're going to get all kinds of
It
Polish
sounds like she was
delicacies, 'cause that's what
training
I
to
love
say
cook,
those
and I
words.
thank my babcia for teaching me.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you.
Like she was being coached.
Okay,
I'm
we
not
have
against
time
these
left for each
questions
of you
in
to make a
principle,
closing
but when the
statement.
stakes
That
are
is
so
one
high and there's so much
uninterrupted
going
moment.
on,
And we will start
this
with
isn't the
Speaker
time.
Yeah.
Doug Ford.
What would you treat somebody else to
Well,
dinner when
folks,
you
we're
can't
gonna have a
afford
very
one
clear
yourself?
choice in this upcoming election. This is all about leadership. We've seen what
Yeah, why
Donald
don't you
Trump
ask a
is going to
homeless
do in the
person?
White House
Hey,
over
what
the
would
next
you
4
invite the
years.
leaders for dinner? What
And
would
no
you
matter if he
invite
puts
them
a
for
tariff
dinner?
on us today,
See that trash
tomorrow,
can
next
over
month,
there?
next year, it would devastate our economy. There's one person on that stage that's going to protect your families, protect jobs, and protect businesses and protect communities, and that's myself. We're going to reinvest
You've been
into the
failing
economy
for the
like we
past
did. We
7
celebrated
years on all those
150,000
things.
jobs. We're going to diversify trade around the world,
7
which
years.
we did. We saw over $70 billion of investment. But I can't do it without a strong mandate. If I get a strong mandate from the people of Ontario,
You
I
don't
will
need a
work
strong
harder than I've
mandate. You
ever
just need a
worked. I will fight
majority.
against Donald Trump like you've never seen before. On February 27th, I'm asking
Admitted
for your
that he
vote,
would have voted
and may
for him.
God bless the people of Ontario.
Doug Ford, thank you very much. We'll turn now to Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie.
We need a premier that will protect everyone's job, not just his own, and who is able to get us a family doctor like they had promised. You know, tonight we talked a lot about some really important issues, no question. And I want to leave you with this. If we want to change our healthcare system and a family doctor, you need to change the government. So today I'm asking those of you who voted NDP in the last election to vote Liberal, to vote for a government that will fix our healthcare system and to get you a family doctor. And together, we can change government. Thank you.
All right, we'll turn now to the NDP's Marit Stiles.
When times are tough, people look for hope. And for me, I find that hope in the strength of the people that I meet all across the province of Ontario. But after 7 long years of Doug Ford and his wasteful scandals and his broken promises, rising costs are really hurting a lot of people in this province, and they are weakening us. He has left us weaker than ever before. A few weeks ago, while he was facing, and we were facing, the biggest threat that our country has faced in generations, he decided to quit his job. Now, most people in Ontario, if you quit your job and then you didn't show up for work the next day, you wouldn't expect to be rehired. But Doug thinks that he deserves that. I got to tell you, you don't have to settle for this. You have the power to change things. And I want to offer you that hope. we can fix our schools. We can build truly affordable, permanently affordable homes. We can hire doctors and fix the healthcare crisis that these folks have contributed to, and we can bring new leadership and new ideas to Ontario. It's time for change.
All right, we will turn now to the Green Party leader, Mike Schreiner.
I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight. My commitment to you is that I will fight to put you and your community first. I will fight for fairness. Right now, in Doug Ford's Ontario, the rich insiders are getting richer and the rest of us are just struggling to get by. You have to ask yourself if it's any better now than it was 7 years ago. And it's clear when it comes to housing, healthcare, education, climate action, affordability, the answer is no. What separates Greens from every party up here is that we're running local champions who will be your voice at Queen's Park, not the leader's voice in your riding. I tell my deputy leaders, Matt Richter and Perry Salmuskoka and Ashland Clancy in Kitchener Center, that I'm not your boss. The people of your riding are your boss. And we need more of that in Ontario. And that's what the Ontario Greens will deliver as we fight for fairness.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. And as we wrap ourselves up tonight for this, the 2025 Ontario Leaders Debate, I would like to thank certainly all 4 leaders who are on this stage with me tonight and thank them for joining us on this family day. PC leader Doug Ford, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner. We also have the NDP's Marit Stiles and Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. Thank you all for those watching and listening, for engaging in your future. As we know, Election Day just 10 days away. It'll happen on Thursday, February 27th. I'm David Common. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to everybody here.
Okay, let's see if I can do this changeover properly. So I start by doing that. And then it's still going to look a bit funny when I do this. But then I do this. There we go. We're back to normal setting.
All right. Well,
I liked Mike Schreiner's answers the best,
yeah, I'm in the same boat.
but he doesn't stand a
Makes me
chance of
sad
winning.
that the NDP talked less about wealth inequality and who's getting richer and who's getting left behind than the Greens. Because they're the official opposition. And they should be way more adversarial on that point. And it really doesn't seem like that's the case that she's trying to make.
No. No, it's just this whole thing. Like, Doug Ford is a horrible person, but he knows how to play the game, and he was very smart in calling the election now. Because so few people are going to go out. And so few people are going to vote, and so few people are engaged right now, especially with the exhaustion from all the politics coming in from the States and everything, and, you know, the call for the federal election here.
He gets to constantly just go, oh, they're going to destroy the economy. They're going to all raise your taxes. He can say that. There's no fact checking. There's no well, actually, nothing in their platform says that they're going to the moderator was there just to be pleasant and keep the conversation pleasant. But Doug Ford was allowed to lie completely unchecked over and over again. And he got the most time to speak because his name was the one that was invoked the most. So that was a debate that benefited him a lot. Just format wise, whether or not he spoke anything of substance, just the format itself just gave him an advantage.
Yeah. It's like, I do appreciate Bonnie at least directly attacking him at times and kind of putting to words some of the anger that people are feeling, but at the same time, she came across as so coached in how to say things and what to say.
Well, she reminds me of every time someone said anything negative, she had this really fake smile on her face. You know, the whole haha, this is not bothering me. This is not bothering me at all. It just and Arrête Styles, I mean, it's hard because I see where she's trying to come from in giving a, like, we can all come together to hope for better. But there really isn't a much of a like, listen, these are the folks that are out to get you. They're not in it for you.
Mhm.
They support him, Doug Ford. They they are coming for your livelihood. They're coming for your ability to make an honest living, to have a clean environment. Um, because like both the liberals and the conservatives were talking about like cutting taxes. And like they're not talking about what they want to spend the revenue on. They just say, "Oh, we're going to
Mhm.
cut taxes, and that will make your life more affordable," as if services are not important enough to be funded. But while she talked about what she wanted to do, and that's great, there wasn't like really um, a clear vision with it. It's like, yeah, you're gonna, do better than Doug Ford. You're gonna invest in these things, and it's gonna lead to better outcomes. Great. That's what every party says when they run, but there's no vision. Like, I mean, her saying that she wants to end homelessness is probably the closest thing to like an actual vision of like
Mhm.
what kind of society. So that's great if she can honestly, hit that message over and over and over again. But she didn't hit it enough. It wasn't enough about like systemically ending homelessness. It
Mhm.
was just um, it was spoken about, but you gotta hit that universal change.
Mhm.
Like no more homelessness, 0. That's the baseline. 0 is the baseline, and then if we fall short of that, it's not because we didn't try. Like
Mhm.
she could have done that for anything else.
Well,
Um,
it's not just that. It's just people on the stage really needed to keep on bringing up, like, it's been 7 years, Doug Ford hasn't achieved this. It's been 7 years, things have gotten worse in this way. It's been 7 years, this has happened. He's broken this promise. And just keep on reinforcing that over and over again. And then I would have, like, actually turned to that stupid moderator. I don't know if he's stupid or not. When he asked that one question about, like, isn't it reasonable that everyone gets a family doctor? And be like, yeah, you know, everyone gets a fucking family doctor.
well, I mean, she did say that she wanted everyone to have a family doctor by the end of 4 years. So I mean,
Mhm.
between that and ending homelessness, I can at least appreciate some like. But again, there's no vision behind it. There's no like,
Mhm.
where have we come from? Where are we going? Like, you're not just electing me to solve your problems. You're electing me to like
What's the
give you
vision for
something for
Ontario?
like ideals to strive for and a society to strive for. And like, it's not just about fixing day to day issues. It's about, where can you lead people, and where can you bring their ideas and their consciousness about what we could be doing as a society to. Because if everything is reactionary about just fixing problems, like
Mhm.
great, fix the problems. But if the problems are fixed and then you got nothing afterwards, um, you know, there's there's less for people to want to be motivated to like. I get everybody wants their immediate problems to be fixed, and that would make society a lot better. But if you can't also articulate what comes after, what comes after, it just shows you don't have enough forward thinking,
Mhm.
which makes me skeptical about you actually wanting to fix things now, because you should be able to think way more forward and explain that to
Mhm.
people.
Yeah. Like right now, the only thing I do is like, yeah, sure, it'd be great if the Greens could get in, but I just endorse the ABC voting, anyone but conservative. If the Liberals have a better chance in the riding, vote for them. If the NDP have a better chance in the riding, vote for them. That's the only thing I endorse right now, except for Sarah Jama. I endorse her, but she also stands the best chance of winning her riding. She's an
And that's
independent.
actually proven to show that like independent party support, like
Mm-hmm.
independent movements can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we were able to get a coalition of like independents that
Mm-hmm.
all voted together, but weren't an actual party, but just
Mm-hmm.
independent candidates, that could be something.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
you would
it's
need a
just
lot more organizing.
like to me, it's the fact that it has been 7 years, and where's the ground gained? Where is the NDP really impressing on people how bad it's been getting the gains in the polls and stuff? Like the only reason why the Liberals are picking up any steam right now, it's not because of anything doing right. It's because of what Doug Ford is doing wrong.
Yeah.
It's not because, you know, they're giving people a vision that they want to seek after. It's that, you know, there are people who are like, a few people who are connecting the dots between like, oh, it took me 15 hours in the emergency room the other day, you know? Gee, I just had to look for a new apartment and rent's really out there. It's not because, you know, the liberals are offering some better vision, and it always then falls back to it's either the liberals or the conservatives. And then Bonnie Crumbie saying, you know, all NDP voters vote for me. And they always do this. There's always this talk around now. It's like, don't split the vote, unite, do this and that and the other thing. But it's always people for the liberals saying that the NDP should be voting for them despite the ridings. It's never the other way around. It's never, you know, people in the NDP saying, well, in these key ridings here, they stand a much better chance, so vote for them. Like, there was even recently an NDP candidate who stepped aside saying, yeah, the Liberal candidate stands the better chance of winning. We need more of that, but we also need that from the Liberal Party. And I keep on, like, I get so mad when people are like, I'm so frustrated the parties won't work together. And that's primarily the Liberals. They're the ones that aren't willing to work together because they would rather have a conservative government in than an NDP government in. Why would I say such an outlandish thing? Well, because when the Liberals realized they were going to lose the election back in 2016, they basically endorsed Doug Ford. You know?
I remember that.
And by basically, I mean they did. They told people to vote for
Because
Doug Ford.
liberals, both federally and provincially, recognize that a large contingent of their voters swing between them and the conservatives.
Mhm.
That they're the red Tory flank of the conservatives or the blue grit flank of the liberals, like that. They swing back and forth, and they always try to appeal to them. But the liberals do also have a progressive wing of their party. And they don't really spend a lot of time courting them. Rather, the progressive wing of their party basically look at the NDP voters, and all they have to say is, "Do you want a conservative majority?" And that's enough to get enough NDP voters to go, "No," and do harm reduction. And on the one hand, I fully support harm reduction because it reduces harm. Like it's that simple. But on the other hand, um, like the NDP is the official opposition. Um, the idea that like just because the liberals happen to be polling better right now, that therefore the ABC vote belongs to the liberals, when there's like a whole bunch of incumbencies that could be supported by not having a liberal candidate dropped in their riding. If they really cared about stopping a majority, they would work together. But the Liberals and the NDP just fundamentally do not have the same base. And I always thought they did. Like it was kind of a foolhardy thing to sometimes think that like, no, Liberals are mostly like just NDP voters that just believe that the Liberals are the best shot at, implementing. And that's why you have so much progressives that support the liberals and not the NDP, and rather it's the liberals court conservative voters, and then they scare NDP voters into voting for them when the conservatives have a chance of winning.
Yeah. Like, it's not
And
that
it's
much different up here than it is down in the States, where the liberals down there, the Democrats, will viciously attack progressives, but, you know, use kid gloves to the conservatives. And the liberals do that up here too. They'll viciously attack like these outlandish ideas of like progressivism and things of that sort. But then they're always playing friendly with the conservatives. Like, all people have to do is look at the voting records. You know, especially federally. Look at the voting records. Who do the liberals vote with more often? It's conservatives. They vote together far more often than they vote with the NDP on issues, especially if it things like, oh, during a pandemic, let's raise taxes on the ultra wealthy and tax companies that are making a profit during this. And both the liberals and conservatives voted that down. Or when they tried to push through pharmacare during a pandemic, both the Liberals and the Conservatives voted that down.
Or even during Trudeau's majority, his first majority, where he could have passed any bill that he only needed Liberal support on, but he ended up passing a draconian Bill C-51 with the Conservative support, meaning that they passed a bill with a majority that Conservatives supported, meaning they put forward a bill Conservatives would support. So that's even with their majority, that they were perfectly fine putting something forward that Conservatives would also support. The NDP and the Greens voted no, but it ended up being like, well, the majority party plus Conservative. It was like, I don't know, like 300 something or high 200 something to. Anyway, it just like that's their base, and just like Democrats with their progressive base, what they do is they kind of take advantage of progressives and left's ideas of empathy and humanity, and they basically go, we know that it's preferred that Trudeau or Kamala gets elected rather than Polyev or Trump. We know that you know that, and therefore if you don't vote for us, we're gonna ping on your conscience, and we're gonna push on your conscience and say, look at what you're allowing to happen because you are not wanting to vote for us. We know that like we could be better, but you also have empathy for all these people that are going to suffer. And do you really want to be that person that caught? Like that's what they do when they're going after progressives. They're taking advantage because they know that we care about people and we don't want to see people get hurt.
Yeah,
And so they rather like twist the knife on that.
That's why I'm always like, when it comes to the actual election, you vote for the least worst option, no matter how much you might have to hold your nose. It's the rest of the time, though, between the elections, you have to be fighting like hell to make sure that somebody gets onto that ballot you want there. So, like, there's nothing like the Liberals, the Democrats, they can twist that knife right now because there is literally nothing you can do. It's just the least worst option at this point. But the rest of the time, there has to be far more organizing. There has to be far more pushback. There has to be far more, effort into finding the candidates and to encouraging them to run, to get into those positions. It's about pressuring the NDP to get back to its roots. But you can't do that during an election. You have to do that in between the seasons because, again, they always just fall back onto in the election, the stakes are too high. You have to vote for the least worst option. That's not actually the time when you get to pressure them.
Right. You got to do your pressuring and organizing and mobilizing in between elections. And you got to start, like a month after you lose. Like you got to, dust yourself off and then get up and then start again. And I think, Democrats and the NDP, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to start doing mass like membership organization and mobilization. Because right now, like there's the membership is tiny. Like and the NDP may have votes and Democrats may have votes, but their membership and their actual like people in the organizations that are trying to organize and do things is significantly small. And it's just again lack of people wanting to participate. And that's why you have, in Nova Scotia, there was only 44% of people that voted. Because people aren't participating. So like there has to be a bigger push. What did the audience think of the debate?
Well,
What do they
let me get into the Sandbox, and I had a thought in my head that was pretty profound that it just totally slipped my mind when we were just
I'm sure
talking.
it'll come back.
Trying to think. What was my very profound?
You know what helps? Get profound thoughts back? Stronger economy.
Oh, that too. Yeah, stronger economy. Do you know what supports a stronger economy? Super chats.
True.
Darn it, what was it that I was going to say? Oh, right. Yeah. No, I was going to mention that it's so important right now for people to get involved with your riding associations, Greens or NDP. Get involved with them, even if they stand no chance of winning, because that's where you meet the people you can organize with. That's where you can network. That's where you can group up. And then what I want to see is that the NDP membership go on strike. I want to see them really force the hands of the upper echelons of both provincial and federal NDP to really force them to get back on track to what the NDP used to be. Like, that's what I want. And that's why I'm still encouraging people to go out and vote, but also get involved by getting involved with the local riding associations.
To highlight about that, because I have actually been a part of riding associations, is there needs to be public access to understanding Robert's rules, because you know, and this is a little bit. I wouldn't say the Robert's rules is ableist, but I would say that it is incredibly like it immediately turns people off if they're not automatically familiar with like the idea of like what it means to put forward a motion and to speak on a question and to like that's a whole process that was invented by like people back in the 1700s who didn't have ADHD, because like it is very hard to sit and listen to Robert's rules about like putting forward motions and calling questions, and like people need to understand that that's what you're walking into whenever you're walking into a riding association, or if you go to a political convention, you have all these like policy stuff. Like there is a lot of like, we got to read this preamble. We got to say this thing first. You want to have a point of privilege. You have to raise it at this point, but not at this. It's it's not easily accessible to people who are coming in, who have worked a long day, or who have, don't have any free time to like actually look up and understand how a whole procedural meeting is run. But you're expected to like just be flown into like that kind of meeting structure, without any sort of like how to. And it's really off putting. And you walk in there as a young person, you're like, it's all these old people in their 50s and 60s who seem like they have all the time to understand how to read all these like whereas and therefore and be it resolved. And unless you actually sit down and like read a book about it and spend hours learning it, you're going to walk into a meeting and be like, this place doesn't belong to me. I don't feel like I have the ability to like make a difference or stand out or do anything, because this incredibly archaic way of running meetings is how it's always been, and there's no, oh my gosh, cat. But yeah, that's so that's something that's got to be addressed.
Yeah. Okay, let's go take a look in the sandbox. Super Strike 9 says, Sandy, exactly. Let's see. Some people wanting Doug Ford to shut up. Don't eat the cord. He looks at the cord like it's spaghetti sometimes. Let's see.
I could probably give you about 10 more minutes, and then it'll be 9:30, and then my
Yeah.
time, and then I gotta hop off and get ready for bed because I gotta work tomorrow.
Okay, well, if people want to send in all your compliments towards Mark, now is the time. The Wild West says my uncle was run evicted while he had end-stage cancer. Ooh, I'm really sorry to hear that. It's so much harder to get healthy when you're suffering from anything. If, you're struggling to keep a roof over your head. Like, there's a lot of people who are unhoused that, are dealing with cancer. Or just even having a basic cold. Do you know how difficult that would be if you're living in a tent in this weather? It's just... let's see, I'm just kind of skimming through this. Looney Tunes 9000, so this debate was like a half hour. Damn, that was quick. No, it was an hour and a half. Je me miss. Oh my god, cost of eggs. We are just the Americans, but slower. Shake my head. Yeah, I thought it was funny when they brought the eggs up, but I also thought it was funny when there was that big truck with eggs on it in the background is the one question. People thinking it was really cringe when Bonnie Crumby was going over all the dishes she would make, the Polish dishes. Looks like there's a lot of love for the Green candidate, Mike Schreiner. Looney Tunes 9000 says, buy my book. Yes, I have the newest edition up with the new cover. So I've made a bunch of edits in it. It's actually a new link, but I have it linked below. And the paperback will hopefully be ready relatively soon, but everyone will know when that's ready. You can be damn sure that will be known throughout the world. Let's see. We got Zeke, that beast, saying Mark is spot on.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that was addressed to, but
just assume
thank you.
it's everything. If they don't actually put the point in there, then it just means everything. That's how I always read it. Also thought your stronger economy comment was funny.
I try.
The Wild West, my local NDP are great, but not impressed with Queen's Park. Yeah. Looney Tunes 9000 is like, what the fuck is Robert Rules?
Robert's Rules is the format that a lot of political parties and business meetings, and it's basically how they organize it so you can like function. It's like what Parliament uses. It's what MLAs use in their chambers of like following certain protocols and knowing when to have a motion and when to second and when to have it's very archaic because it's old and has not been like updated in a very long time and doesn't really work in a modern setting with a lot of people who are much faster on the draw because it's very and it's again it's not accessible to people who are just walking off the street wanting to learn about like how to be a part of a party or how to be a part of a meeting because it's you gotta like kind of be willing to read this language and these set of rules that were written 300-400 years ago. I don't know when, to be honest. And it just again, it's not like you get a person that just goes, okay, so this is how meetings run. This is what Robert's rules are. This is like you don't get that because there's nobody there to do that. And so it's very you have to have time to want to learn it. Which doesn't help.
And then I also find it very restrictive because it's like, well, unless we follow these specific protocols, even though what you said makes a lot of sense and we should probably do that, we can't do that because we don't have quorum or we don't have these other silly things in place or, it's the order of operations in any sort of like meeting that you're having. And if you don't follow them exactly, then somehow it doesn't count, even though it rules out a lot of common sense things that could be done.
That doesn't even include all the, constitutional conventions within provincial and federal politics, which is literally the fancy way of saying it's an unwritten rule that everyone just kind of agrees is in place. Which for somebody like me who's autistic, who doesn't understand what an unwritten rule could be, because I need all my rules written out. The fact that we have actual constitutional powers that are basically just like handshakes between people is scary to me, but that's just a whole other thing. So again, it's very hard for politics to be accessible when it's not made for people who are, our age or younger. If an 18, 19, 20-year-old were to walk into a political party convention without ever attending or listening to anything, and they were to have to sit and listen for 20 minutes while they, have a point of personal privilege and then, count, a motion to to add an amendment, and then have this amendment be passed without debate, or we need a motion for that, and it's like that's not accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
Who's just walking in.
Well, here's a comment for you from Christy Z, as I refer to her name in Canada instead of Z. Mark, you're very handsome. You look like a French poet or artist. Very well spoken and insightful. Appreciate your time tonight.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the French, actually, because I am French, and I just don't. I'm not bilingual yet, but I do spell it M-A-R-C. So you know.
Let's see.
Oh, very nice. Thank you.
Let's see. I think those are. There's a lot of back and forths going on in the Sandbox too. So I don't know. If you have any final thoughts, I'll stay on stream a little bit longer with folks, just to chit chat. But yeah, it's 9:30 for
Got
you.
me for another about 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna hop off.
Oh, you get to see Kitty. Oh, look, you Kitty. So why don't you tell people what you're up to, if you're doing anything that you might want people to follow, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I don't really go on X very much anymore, but you can find me on X under my name. Same with myself on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. Basically, right now, what I've been doing is I've been trying to get into better shape. I've been trying to like exercise more and get in better shape because unfortunately, within my line of work of wanting to do acting, it's still an incredibly shallow industry where you need to look really, really good in order to be given the time of day. It's unfortunate, but I'm just trying to get into more shape so I can start auditioning for stuff that you know I can get on TV for because right now I'm trying to grow my hair out a little bit just because of like the Hallmark aesthetic. They actually are starting to film Hallmark here in Nova Scotia, so you know I
Yeah, I
gotta
was
I gotta shoot
wondering,
my
like,
shot.
what's the film industry like in Nova Scotia?
This is probably the only time you're going to hear me give credit to the progressive conservatives, but they actually did better than the liberals in terms of funding the film industry because the liberals, when they came in, Stephen McNeil, is actually even more of an austerity hawk than the conservatives, if you can honestly believe that. Uh, and so there was a tax rebate that really helped make our industry stand out, where you would get a 75% tax rebate if you filmed in Nova Scotia, if you used local Nova Scotia talent, if you used local Nova Scotia business while you were filming. And he scrapped it and he got rid of it for 10 years. And for 10 years, our entire place dried up because without taxes, there's no incentive to come out here. It was easier just to go to Ontario to film or BC to film or film down in the States. And then the progressive conservatives, when they got elected for the first time in 2021, they actually brought back and revamped and expanded the tax breaks for filming to come, and then filming actually showed up. So it's probably the only thing I'll give them credit for was revitalizing the film industry here. We actually have a lot of TV and film that are now filming here, which is really great. I'm really looking forward to seeing. There is I'm not going to say it yet, but there is a TV show that's coming out on Amazon that you might be able to see me in the background of, just being a little silly. So that's about what I'm looking forward to. But I'm excited to be auditioning and just getting into the film industry because I love acting and acting's my passion. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, you can find me all on those locations on social media. And yeah, I do political commentary because I'm actually a political scientist technically. So might as well use it. Anyway, Sandy, thank you for having me on. It's always fun to come on and chat and do this, and I like coming on and like interacting with you and your audience. So thank you for having me, and until next time.
Okay, and to the audience, I will be right back. And I am back. Got to take the earphones out of my ear holes because they hurt after a while. Because I'm not planning on playing any more audio. Just kind of chilling with the chat right now. Until, I don't know. I didn't have anything planned to actually like talk about or anything today other than just going over the debate. I wish that debate could change minds. Like, I really, really wish people would just vote on policy. Because if people voted on policy, we would not have a conservative government in right now. I think what Mike Schreiner was saying was super solid. And quite honestly, I think he would make the best premier of this province. But, you know, it's reality is it's not going to be him. It's not. It'd be nice to see the Green get some gains and some momentum. But, you know, it's not going to happen. And I'm still super worried that we're going to get under 40% turnout this election. And so many people will still then like whine and complain about not being able to get a family doctor or the wait times or the cost of groceries and the cost of rent and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, you could have done something about it if you had gone out to vote. Also, a lot of issues with the weather and people with disabilities and just challenges getting out. A lot of people might actually forget it's happening. Like, they might be sort of aware an election is going on, but without like the constant signs that everyone gets so sick of seeing because they're buried in the snow, such short notice, it's an off season for election. It wouldn't surprise me if election day comes up and there's a lot of people who's like, oh, what do you mean it's today? And then just not vote because they don't know what's going on. Oh. Anyway, I'm going to check. We have so many people in the Sandbox right now, so thank you everyone for coming out. Super appreciate it. I know this is a Canadian debate, so it's not like getting swarms of people, dozens and dozens of people watching the channel. But let's see, we have, yeah. Normally I start at the beginning and start telling, like, just reading off names, but it's a bit past that point right now. But yes, the letter hack will be on in just a little bit, and you will see me again, not live. We did a pre-recorded. I interviewed him on his show, talking about parasocial relationships. And so he's going to be screening that later tonight. So everyone, you get to see me again, just not live. Because I see Morbius Dragon, I guess, just showed up. John Davis says Mike should win, but Doug probably will. Yeah. Like, it's one of the things about the parliamentary system that a lot of people don't get, and I wish more people understood, And I wish there was a way around it, but we don't get to choose our prime minister. We don't get to choose our premier. That's not who we're voting for. We're voting for a party. And then whoever happens to be that leader of the party gets to be the one in the leadership position. Because it would be nice if we could just vote for the premier. You know, if those 4 names that we saw on that stage were on the ballot, to just vote for one of them to be the premier. Because then we might actually get a different premier. But it's, you know, even the premier only gets 1 vote in parliament. They don't have any powers to supersede anyone. So it's just the way the system works. Because I've had so many people be like, well, I really like this candidate from the Conservative Party, so I voted for him because he came across as like a really nice person. And it's like, yeah, he's still going to vote to raise rent, not decrease your taxes, to make things more expensive. Like, he's still going to vote within party lines. Like, everyone is... You step out of the line at all with the parties and they kick you out and you lose all of your power. As Sarah Jama, as it happened with her. So you're not voting for a person, you're voting for a party. And it's really unfortunate that it's happening that way in this country, but a lot of people need to kind of wake up to that situation. Because it is super frustrating. Let's see. And, oh, there's a Joycey Marc in the Sandbox. Hello. Also saying, loved being here. Thanks for having me. Well, it was great having you on. Let's see. Zeke Dabi's Canadian debate was great. I don't like Ford, though. Yeah, not too many people should. And Mark also saying, every riding is its own election, technically. Is in its own election, technically. Yeah. I just wish we had more say over who the candidates are. And that's a dig at the federal NDP. Because when I had Brooklyn Wallace on, she's a candidate for the Ontario NDP. Everyone, go check out that interview. It's pinned to the top of my page right now on YouTube. Their constitution is a little bit different than the constitution of the federal NDP, because I have personal experience with the federal NDP. So I know they just appoint people, and that it's not like the riding association necessarily gets to vote on who that person is. And I think if there was more power in the riding associations to choose who the candidates were, we'd have much better candidates running. And if they stop putting so many barriers in place for the people who can run to be in the leadership position, because it doesn't matter if it's federal or provincial, you're talking tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars needed in order to run as the leader, which means you are making sure a whole bunch of people who might be fantastic leaders can't run. It's made inaccessible to so many people to be able to run as a leader in a party because they don't have that type of money. And it'd be nice if we could just go back to being able to, like, actually, let's elect the person to leadership who really represents the heart of the party, as opposed to who can raise the most money. Morbius Dragon, sorry I'm late. Sandy, I've been dealing with dental pain and I've been drugged up and sleeping. So sorry to hear about that. And Mark also saying my riding's Conservative Riding Association is dropping a celebrity musician as its candidate. Zeke Tepe says, go Greens! Go Greens! The Wild West, I vote for the best MP in my riding because I want them to have my $2. And the Wild West also suggesting to Morbius Dragon for black tea to help with the pain. Looney Tunes 9000 says that I'm on point, and I tend to agree with whenever people are complimentary towards me. Also, you might have seen I've updated the cover of my book. There is a new link available down below. I don't have the graphics here, do I? Oh, I guess I do. boom. Or is that one? No, let's try that one. Sure, that one. I need to change the color of the print because it's always over the mic and you can't see the color. You can't see the wording too well when it's, there we go. Yeah, I've updated the cover. I've made some edits to it. So it is a new book. The old listing is still there until I'm like 100% sure that this one has gone through and is okay. But I'm super frustrated because I accidentally uploaded the wrong new cover. So it's not as vibrant as the new cover. So I want to see if I can upload the new cover without it getting mad at me, because I tried to upload a new cover to the original listing and also change the author name to just me. And that didn't work. Amazon got really mad and said, you either change it back or we will take it down, because it's too much of a change. It's too big of a change. So I'm hoping if I change the cover, but it's still basically the same cover, just a little bit more vibrant, that they'll let me make that change. If not, I might need to do a new listing for that one little thing that's bugging me. But I'm also working with some right now to make the cover for the paperback, because like, yes, I have the skills in Photoshop. I could probably do it myself, but there's a lot of requirements in the dimensions and stuff like that that I have a really hard time wrapping my brain around, and I'm not understanding it. So the person was part of the writing derby that made the cover in the first place is the one that's helping me do the wraparound cover for the paperback. And so fingers crossed I can get that out soon, because I do need it ready on time for my TYT video. Because, yeah, I'm going to be mentioning my book in my TYT video, or videos at this point, because I've had so much content put into those videos right now that I'm like, I might actually have to break it into a couple videos. And what I'm going to do is I will premiere the video, but then do a live stream as a talkback, and I'll hopefully try to find somebody to come on and join me with that talkback. Let's see. Mark is asking, do you remember the United Breaks guitar songs? Maybe if I heard them? He's running to be the conservative candidate federally. And Mark is also scared that he'll win. Jet, they wouldn't let you change your own book? Courageous. It's more they don't want it to confuse the people who might have already bought the book or something. So you can make changes, and I did make like very minor changes to the manuscript. That's allowed. But when you do something as bold as change the cover and the author, they're like, this is a new listing. To prevent people from, I don't know. Because I would think if you had a wildly successful book and then you replaced it with something else, then it's not like that something else will do any better. Or it's not, I don't know how you could ride off the coattails, let's put it that way. But you can make some changes. Other changes are just like, no, it's a new listing. So I'll have to see if I can upload the new cover. Because you're not even seeing it here. You probably wouldn't even notice the difference. That's how little it is, but it bugs me because I'm the one that did it. But hopefully I can get that in paperback soon. And as Looney Tunes is mentioning, yes, I could still use help with Frodo's vet bills, ongoing vet bills. To do that, you can use the PayPal link in the description box below, or if you're Canadian, just e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com. And the more help I can get with that right now, the better, because, yeah, I had another flat tire because the rim on my car, the tire rim, is really rusty. So I might need a new tire rim. Yeah, that will suck. But do I have all these other things? Oh, I do have that. I'm just wondering. It's been a while since I've done like all the setup stuff in here. How very visible is it? I can probably move that to the other side. As I'm doing this in real time for everyone. Oh, no, that's even worse. I need to have a better system for having all my socials and everything pop up on this screen. Do I have a different? No, that was it. That was it. That was it. And I think Zeke to B. Sandy, any chance we see you as a guest on other Lefty channels? I'm open to it. I have occasionally appeared on the Power Report, and I have occasionally appeared with the Letter Hack, and I've been on Left Past 10 once. But if you want to see me on other Lefty channels, you need to bug them. You need to let them know that you would like to see me on there. Because I am more than open to going on to other Lefty channels. Let's see. I don't know. I didn't have anything else planned to do right now. And I've been working all weekend between stuff for my book, stuff for my videos, getting videos clipped for the last live stream I did, preparing and doing the live streams. Like tomorrow I'll be working all day on the TYT video because I've at least started to split it up a bit, where before I was like, I can only work on the TYT video and nothing else, but the election is kind of taking precedent. So now I'm at least splitting it up. So tomorrow will be a TYT video day because it's to the point where I'm rendering all the little snippets that I have. But I realize as I'm doing that there's a lot of crossover with the montages, the snippets and the montages. So I need to change that so that you don't see the repeated snippet in different things, even though it's relevant to different sections. So it's me trying to figure out which one is this the most relevant to. And then once I have all the little montages done, then it's a matter of rewording the script I already have to make sure I'm saying everything that I want to say and stuff. But once I have all the montages kind of rendered, that will give me a far better idea as to how long this is going to be. It's going to be a long video. So I think I'm splitting it into at least 2, maybe even 3. But I'll know better once I have that all rendered and then redo the script. But the TYT video, it's not going to be done till March. Like the election is what's taking my brain right now, because I also need to work on a video that I was planning on making about Doug Ford, where it's like Ontario has 99 problems and Doug Ford is all of them, where I just list and show headlines so that people can read the headlines to news articles of all the issues of him. And I'm pretty sure I can find 99. I don't know. It's a lot of work. But I do want to just get a video together where I'm like, just listing, here are the things that Doug Ford has done that is horrible, in some, very vain hope that it will go viral and flip the election. Vote ABC. ABC, that's what I tell you. ABC. I might be doing another live stream before the 27th, Looney Tunes, possibly on Friday or Saturday. We'll see. Let's see. But yeah, I think I'm just done. I'm running out of steam. Sorry for eating on camera. I don't like eating on camera, but I had some tasty fudge and it's quiet to chew. So I decided to do that. Give me a little sugar boost, but I do need to eat something a little bit more substantive because I didn't really have dinner. Hello, Matthew the Kilt. Lightbulb lushes love their altered carbon. And Looney Tunes spelling ABC like say bay day, I think is what you're going for. I don't know. But yes, I'm done. I'm tired. And I need to go burn some food for me to eat. Because that's how I cook. Anyway, stay tuned. And thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you to the mods for keeping the sandbox clean of turds. Thank you to all the people who have become a patron. Super appreciate it. Helps to keep my channel afloat. Thank you to all the people who have sent in super chats today. Again, super appreciated. I got actually a fairly decent payday from Google last month. And yeah, that, it doesn't seem like a lot of money to some people, but it's a lot of money to me. And it really, really does help to keep me afloat. Especially with, the bills that just pop up, like, needing a new tire rim. And yeah, all that support, super, super helpful. And am I forgetting to thank? I thank the mods. I thank the patrons. Thank people who've done the super chats. Oh, thank you to the people who help out with the Amazon wish list. Easter is coming up, so you're probably going to see like a tone change on it of like all the Easter candy I love, because Easter is my favorite candy holiday, because it's still one of the rare holidays that has its own stuff that comes out specifically around that time of year versus just a rebranded same thing of something else. And so there's a lot of Easter candy that I absolutely love. So you might see a large influx of Easter candy being put onto my wish list. But it can make me smile. Stuff to help with my studio, stuff to help with my art, stuff to help with my cats. You know how it is. But anyway, Matthew the Celt, Earth Guardian Academy, The Wild West, Jet, Looney Tunes 9000, 56th Nick Rich, Morbid Lasso. I totally did not say that right. Zeke the Beast. Again, thank you so much, Mark, for coming out. As I'm reverse scrolling to see names to just kind of read out. John Davis. Everyone. Y'all rock. So with that, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.